Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the MHA What If, with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Deku died and was reincarnated as a hero. All credits for this video go to their respective authors, so please support the real author. Check out the link in the description for more details. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Prologue. Every man or woman live through their own lives differently from others, but they share the same way. We are born from the womb of our mother. We grew and learned from things that everyone needs to understand. We make companions along the way of our journey and share the same experience with them. We hone our skills so it will be useful for the community and society we live in. We meet the love of our life and decide to have a long relationship with that person. We embrace our family because we don't know when it will be our last time with them. We create a newborn so you can teach them what you know. And lastly, not having any regrets when you're laid on a bed lifelessly while recalling each moments of your life until the spark of life fades from your body. Yes, living your life to the fullest and not having any regrets behind is one of the most achieving things people can attain from. Yet, there are some people that regret things with I should have done this, or I should have done that. Lives have many hardships, no matter where you come from. From a rich trying to gain and be popular for those that lives on their own worlds. From a poor trying to survive the society that scorned them, or had the unluckiest habits they get. Even from the other worlds, each person lives with hardship. Among all people, there was a single soul that drifted lonely on the never-ending whiteness. The soul remained quiet despite that he could hear his own voice or thoughts. He decided that it wasn't worth of saying or thinking anything along. The soul watched left and right. There was nothing on either side, not even another soul. Was he even somewhere? Was it heaven? Or was it hell? Or even the purgatory? Is he going to disappear? Or he is returning to the living, forgetting everything he had known? He does not know. He was not ignorant of death. He killed before, just to protect others. No matter. He knows that he isn't a saint or the devil to decide such decision. He did what he had to do because it was his duty. He had an unfortunate life. Yet, it came upon someone who took him to be somebody that could protect. The soul closed his eyes and recalled those memories. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. Look at this. A young child with brown hair styled with a short twin tails showed him a frog on her petite hands. Yuck, that's disgusting, sis. Another child with the same color, but styled on a short ponytail gagged as she maintained her distance with her sister. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. Tell her to toss it away. Yes, he loves those years when they were simple children. I am telling you, you need solve this problem if you want to play. The second sister told her lazy first sister as she adjusted her glasses and pointed at her overdue homework. Don't wanna, homework is boring. The first sister groaned, sticking her tongue out. I want to watch My Hero Academia. Sis. Then they heard clapping that came out of his hands. Now, young ladies, it is all right to rest once in a while. Homework is a priority, yes, but rest is also fundamental for the mental strength. Yay. Oh, come on, the twins shouted in varied emotions when they watched together that series that the second young lady found. Come on, kick his ass. The energetic girl cheered aloud as they were seeing the sports festival arc. The scene they were seeing right now was the main protagonist Izuku Midoriya fighting against Shoto Todoroki. The man stood behind them while watching the program. He was happy that his misuses were enjoying the show. He didn't know why they got into these anime and manga things. But then, he got engrossed in the story. About a young boy that his fate was written in stone, which he could have any power. Weak in physic, weak in emotions, weak in mentality. That would be something he could sympathize as he was like him once. Then, the main character found him. The greatest hero of the series, All Might. At first, he didn't give him much choice, as he would have said to him the same. Heroism is not something a child could understand. Yet the way he said it, it was shameful how he had destroyed the little hope he had on the child. The young misuses shown him the different alternative universes they stumbled upon. There were stories that the main character becomes a villain. There were stories that he obtained a dormant power and becomes a hero on his own. There were stories that he was a powerful quirk, which he had to hide it so nobody could look at him in the wrong way. There were also crossover stories that he preferred reading. Better yet, he had to stop their misuses to read those hentai things they found once and other materials they got. At the end, all things that starts has to end. Awa. MHA finished. The first missus Would she grown up to a beautiful woman with long silky black hair, wearing glasses that shone her brown eyes? Sighed. Well, it was good while it lasted. Yeah, I hope that the Horikoshi-sensei think of some new material. The second Mrs. Which she also grown into a beautiful woman, except that she is the opposite of her sister. She was more energetic than usual, had short black hair, light brown eyes, and tiny freckles. My Hero Academia was the biggest series made by him. The first Mrs. raised an eyebrow at her sister. And why are you calling Horikoshi-sensei? We're Western while he's Eastern. It doesn't make any sense. The second Mrs. scoffed. It's the manner, sis. He's Japanese, so we will say it like Japanese. The first sister looked at her flatly. That doesn't make any sense. She deadpanned. No, huh? You don't make any sense. Why you? Both siblings were twins. They didn't share the same personality, but it always came into an agreement whenever they disagree or need a solution. While they wore differently or same, just that the palette of their outfit would be different. One wore a sun pendant, while the other wore a moon pendant around their necks. Their father, the reason I became their guardian, would always tell stories of how they chose their names. But that was not important. What was important is that he is dead. How? Well, that does not matter important anymore. He didn't know for how long he has been in this soul world, as he named it. But if this is his punishment for what he had done, then so be it. There is no use of crying over spilled milk. You either die and accept it like a man or curl over and cry like a baby. The choice is obvious. Still, while he is here, maybe he should speak up. His voice resonated around the empty place, echoing his voice like in an empty theater. He remained quiet again. Well, this was his punishment then. He was not a saint at all, neither a devil. He knew what's good and bad, the consequences of his actions, the inaction of his. Well, at least, he had something to protect, right? He would have wished to protect better. Ha! The soul chuckled grimly. At least, they are safe. The will to protect. The strength to protect. The state to protect. The preparation to protect. The moment to protect. If his injury had not rendered him useless, he would have been alive and with them. Suddenly, a light appeared in front of him. What's this? The soul eyed the sphere of light in front of him. The soul's mass distorted to a single blob that could be his hand and touched. The moment it touched, its light shone brighter than before, even blinding an eyeless soul. Once its lights faded, the soul looked back and blinked in confusion. What the? The wonder of his tone had to be, because in front of him stood a board with words in cursive. Oh dearest soul, you had been placed into this world because I, the god of your world, couldn't choose what to do with your soul. The soul read. Okay, so I'm now reading a letter for the supposed god. I was never the religious type. Grunting, he continued. You had endured many challenges throughout your entire life. You endured the pain, the despair, the corruption, yet despite the world you lived in, you tried to live the best of all. The soul nodded. At least he knew that this god knew his entire life, if he or she wrote this. You were chosen to be reincarnated into another world. The soul wanted to retort this stupidity until he glanced on the next paragraph. You had the heart of a hero and the valor of one despite your murderous actions. The soul grimaced. Yeah, like he said he had known death. You have been given less at the start and ended with everything. Your actions might be told. Your reputation could be remembered. But time fades everything like the sand. Nothing is eternal. History is written by the winners with the loser's blood. The soul sighed. He recognized and understood what it meant. But not all souls are given a second chance in life. At that, it brought his attention. You have given the chance to reincarnate to another world with your memories intact. While it is wrong to snatch you from your world, you had earned the right to reincarnate. The soul, if it should take this opportunity. While it was a nice choice, he wouldn't want to worry when their souls pass away. They wouldn't know where he was and worry. Please. A faint and last memory of his resonated when he thought about them. The begging of the first Mrs. Hold a little more, please. The worry of the second Mrs. Yes. His last memory was his death. His coughed blood, and on the background, there was fire. Next to him, a body of a person that he had long forgotten, prone in death with the blood spreading on the floor. Young asterisk 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 asterisk. Young asterisk 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 asterisk. You are both all right. He choked on his wound and his consciousness was starting to fade. I am glad. Do not speak. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. The first Mrs. begged as she was looking for something to keep him alive. You can make it. You always do. Come on, come on. The second Mrs. sobbed on her phone, trying to call for help. He knew that he wasn't going to survive this. Not this time. Young asterisk, 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 asterisk. I don't. He gasped painfully as his muscles began losing strength. I don't think I have much time. And no. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. Don't speak. The second Mrs. mumbled frantically. He thought that she had finished calling for an ambulance. Not that he is going to survive from it. I called for an ambulance. Just hang on. Both masseuses knelt just between him. He barely raised his bloodied hands to caress their cheeks and smile at him with the last strength he had. Don't. Asterisk gasp asterisk worry about me. He smiled, blood dripping from his lips, nose and wounds. I know. Asterisk gasp asterisk that you too. Asterisk pant asterisk are strong. You'll get through this. Asterisk gasp asterisk even without me. Don't. The first Mrs. choked on her tears, holding his hand. We don't know how to look for ourselves. The second Mrs. sobbed, also holding his other hand. You were always with us. Without you, we don't. Shush, he whispered hoarsely. I asterisk gasp asterisk I am proud of you too. You brought this old man joy and happiness, which I had never thought that I would get. He was starting to feel tired, but he needed to tell them. Smile, he motioned with a smile of his own. Smile, and live. I know you too. Will be fine. With a last breath and strength, his hands fell down, and the last thing he heard were the sobs of the two misses that cried over him. Now that he was alone with a rectangular panel just in front of his eyes, he could feel that he did well on keeping them safe despite his stupidity and reckless attitude before maturing. Ha! He chuckled mirthlessly. Who would have thought that I would be given a second chance despite how I started? Shaking his head, he looked at the panel. All right, I'll accept the second chance to reincarnate. The panel changed. You are given the choice to choose which alternative universe you'll be sent. There aren't limits between real or fictional, and given that the world is a fantasy, you'll also be given a choice to choose a power. Multiple universes were a chance that nobody would pass on. But he had to be careful with his choice. Given the challenge that the universes he chooses, it would depend the chance of survival. His first choice would have been a world of DC Universe or Marvel, given that he was Western. But there were overpowered beings that could fight with the heroes of those comics, so he passed on that choice. The world of Harry Potter wouldn't have been a bad choice, but given his personality, he would have been part of the Slytherin, and that would mean being part of the antagonists. And he didn't like Draco much. There were also choices like the Eastern culture comics, or manga, or anime, which he could choose from. Sigh, he couldn't believe what he was going to say. I'll choose the universe of My Hero Academia, I said. The panel changed. You have chosen. My Hero Academia universe, where heroes and villains are a norm and quirks are the fundamental power in the universe. You have been given 4 quirks after analyzing your history. Elemental Dragon. As a mutant-type quirk, your form will be given of a dragon. You will be able to chance between human, hybrid, and full dragon. You'll be able to sprout wings and fly over for a period of time depending your training. Your form will endure the most harsh punishments because of your hard scales. As an elemental, you are capable to control any elements and even combine them. Disadvantages. You won't be able to control your mutation at early stage. You'll be tired more often as you overuse your quirk in rare cases. You'll lose control of your mind going into a berserk state. Elemental Dragon. Huh, I muttered quietly. Would that be because of my temper? Correct. If he still had eyes, he would have looked at it flatly. Right. Let's see my other options first. Oni. As a mutant-type quirk, you will look normal, but your height and size would be different as the age goes on. You will sprout horns and get the strength of a full matured Oni. You'll be capable of controlling the energy inside your body to create lightning and fire. Disadvantages. Capable of injuring others with your Goliath strength, if not controlled. You'll get weary if uses too much energy of your body and many muscle aches. Given the explanation, that would have been the time that I injured my colleagues accidentally. I don't know. Next. Magic Eyes. As an emitter-type quirk, you'll be able to switch on-off your eyes as it would look like your sclera had turned black with the color of your eyes depending on what colors you were born with shine. capable of moving objects and people with mass-like telekinesis on your sight. You'll be able to fly or hover with your telekinesis and even summon skeletal beings with unique abilities. And lastly, you'll able to use the rare power teleportation capable of teleporting every known place you had remembered. Disadvantages. Overusing your eyes could render temporal blindness and migraines. Somehow, this quirk is more of a joke quirk of a character I remember. I deadpanned. If only I could control bones, and there would be the joke I've been thinking of. Armory. As a emitter-type quirk, you are capable of constructing any weapons such as firearms, bladed and blunt weapons, bombs, even ammunition from lethal and non-lethal ones, and even nuclear and laser weapons. Disadvantages. Like the creation quirk, you'll have to use your fat cells to create your objects, but it would also use your stamina given the size of the weaponry. Well, I've been good using weapons through my entire life. He shrugged indifferently. He would have chosen body arsenal, but given that he needed to get a permit to use a gun or any kind of weapon in the middle of a city, he'll have to pass on. Still though, he wouldn't be able to choose between the first threes, as there were pros and cons that he could exploit on them. Decisions. Just as he was about to choose one, a new panel formed up. Given that the decision is hard, God has given the chance to choose two quirks, which will merged on. The soul blinked in surprise at such chance. Well, as the saying goes, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. He sighed. At least, that is a desirable choice for me. First of all, he needed to be careful with the main antagonist and mastermind of all dangerous villains. All for one. He needed to think which of all three quirks would be the desirable choice for him to be capable of fighting against any of his subordinates. Each quirks had their advantages and disadvantages. Looking at the advantages, Elemental Dragon and Oni would be desirable against close combat battles, which he would be able to win if he thinks it through. As for the magic eyes, he had the advantages of summoning and having them fight close combat, while he gave them support with his telekinesis and teleportation. On the other hand, the disadvantages were just as he suspected. While Elemental Dragon and Oni's disadvantages were capable of lessening their weaknesses, Magic Eyes' weakness of temporal blindness and migraine wasn't something that it is capable of making it better, so he'll have to use it sparely if given the moment. He thought. He thought more. He thought harder. Until he had his answer. Have you chosen your quirks? The panel had asked for the 10th time, and he repeatedly answered with a not yet, but this time he had his answer. Yes. Once he had chosen his quirks, his vision had darkened, and he himself slept. Oh. He did not know for how long he had been sleeping. He twitched rarely, and he could hear some faint voices which he reacted instinctively. He felt like he was in an enclosed place, and as the time goes, he could feel that the space he was sleeping on was becoming uncomfortable. One day, he didn't know how long, he felt like the liquid around him disappeared, and the space around him twitched, and he could hear a faint shout of pain. He didn't know, but he slept on, until he felt like he was being pushed to the bright hole. Once he was out, his first instinct as a baby, which he had known for some time, was crying. He could feel a towel covering him and placing him somewhere to check on him. After some time, he could feel being lifted up and bring him to his new parents. His eyes weren't used to the light, yet, but his hearing could grasp what they were saying. Congratulations, it is a boy. A voice cheered just he handed him to his parents. He blearily opened his small and untrained eyes, barely catching sight of his parents. Honey, look at him. Isn't he a handsome boy? A male voiced out, proud on his tone. Yes. A female voice gasped wearily, having him out of her womb and finally being able to rest. He looks just like you. And he has your eyes. His new instinct had him cry again, and his new parents cooed him to sleep. Not that it embarrassed him. Just as he was about to sleep, he last heard them. What should we name him? His father spoke up. We should call him. That was the last thing he could hear before sleeping on, inwardly happy that he had now a new life and family. The cinnamon roll and Pomerania. Having lived the second life, he had a hard time living with an infant body. But first, he should know what he was named. He was now known as Takahashi Junpei, the second son of the Takahashi household. And, yes, I'm going like the Eastern way of naming. You know, the family name first before their given name. If you're doing Japanese you write like a Japanese with their own rules. His new parents were named as Takahashi Genkei father, age of 28, and Takashi ni Suzuki Hideko mother, age of 26. Genkei was a tall man with an athlete build. He had a messy navy-colored hair that reached to his neck, and he had two antennae-like bangs hanging just to his eyes' height. He had a tan-colored skin which reflected on how much he was outdoors. He had round teal-colored eyes and had a small horizontal scar on his nose. His quirk is Beast Transformation, which, as it is named, he is capable of transforming on any animal of the world, from mammals, reptiles, birds, and even aquatic ones. Junpei once saw his father turn into one, and saw how his skin turned on the animal he became. Fur, scales, and even feathers appeared on his body, as his transformation was between hybrid and full animal. Hideko was the same as his father, much smaller than Genkei, and had the same build as him. She had long light purple-colored hair that reached her back. She had almond-shaped eyes with her eyes colored in amethyst, which Junpei still can't believe, and get used to that. There were people with colored hairs, as it wasn't something you saw every day. She had fair skin, but he had once saw her mother having a nasty scar on the side of her abdomen. He hadn't yet asked her what he was, but when he did, she deflected it with other things, so he let her be. Her quirk was called Magnet, which she can attract and repulse any kind of metallic object. Unfortunately, she cannot attract anything that is flesh. If there were somebody that had something metallic on said person, or attached something inside, she would be able to use her quirk. Many would think that her quirk would be a disadvantage against close combat opponents. But when he saw her mother slap her father for something they had flirted in the house, which weighed more than her, she did indeed send him crash on the ground, and seeing that Genkei wasn't fazed at all, it seemed to be a norm. From what he had gathered, both parents are heroes, except that Hideko has to temporarily retire from her injuries. He didn't know if that was before or after his birth, but he'll get his answer one day. Next up were his siblings, Takahashi Keiji, first son, age of 6, and Takahashi Fumiko, first daughter, age of 4. Keiji had a mixture of navy blue and purple-colored hair, which he styled into a short, messy hair. His eye shape was in the middle between round and almond, and it was teal just like their father. His quirk was Power Beast, which was different, and yet same with Genkei's Beast Transformation. While he could transform into an animal, it didn't mean that he was capable of obtaining the strength, speed, and flexibility of any animal. Think of him as the male version of Vixen of the DC universe, except that he didn't need the collar to be able to be any beast, real or not. Fumiko, like their mother, had purple-colored hair styled into a small ponytail. Her eyes were rounder than almond-like, and had a white tail hanging on the back on her waist. By that was because she had a quirk called Divine Fox, which basically, if he could remember the Japanese mythology, it was considered as a kitsune. From what he understood, she is able to use many kind of magic. Divine or evil kitsunes were famous for, if he remember well, it were shapeshifting, possession, fox fire, star sphere, dream manipulation, flight, invisibility, illusion creation, mind control, contemporary control, and more. But from what he had seen, she can only use shapeshifting, dream manipulation, and illusion creation. He didn't know if she'll be able to do more, and the only reason that he knew about dream manipulation was because he had heard once Keiji chasing madly at Fumiko for ruining his dream as she ran away giggling childishly. Both siblings were like oil and water in many cases, but they were together as family when they were needed. Awa, look how chubby Junpei's cheeks are, Fumiko cooed, pinching his cheeks. I'm gonna be the best Aniki ever, Keiji stated proudly. Well, in this case, they were in agreement that their little brother was the cutest thing in the world and were coddling him. Which basically he was in an uncomfortable situation. While he had the body of a baby, his mind was of an old man, and the act of familiarity was not something that he was best at. He was probably better when he did it to his two misses he protected. But being the one to be receiving this kind of love was extraterrestrial. But to not let them think that he was an oddball for not reacting, he had to pretend by babbling cutely despite his vocal cords hadn't reached maturity, and got them into his clutches. For the sake of not getting their attention, he thought as he continued playing with his siblings. But for the most part of his life, he couldn't do much because of his lack of motor skills and the embarrassing moments to be trained to potty. Year 2275, 2 years later, age of 2. 2 years had flown by as he was still incapable of doing anything with his infant body. Alas, he had managed to walk on his own and talk, although sounding more of a babbling than actual talking, and go to the bathroom alone. Still, living off with a family which he grew up as an orphan in his previous family wasn't so bad. He had slightly grown up as his hair began growing, which he discovered that he had navy-colored hair, just as his father, and had almond-shaped eyes and amethyst-colored pupils, just like her mother. There wasn't any physical changes, yet as his quirks hadn't yet developed. So until then, he had to be patient and live his life. Junpei-kun. His mother's voice brought him out of his thoughts, as he stayed in front of the TV alone as Kenji and Fumiko were at school, while his father was at work. Do you want to go to the park? He didn't have much to do apart from watching TV, working on his motor skills, and even planning. Shrugging inwardly, he answered, Yes, Mama. With that, he and his mother were walking outside around the neighborhood. We arrived at the park, and he saw many children playing around and parents chatting among each other. Hideko-chan. We turned to the voice and Junpei's eyes widened slightly when he recognized the two people that were calling his mother. The brunette slender version of Midoriya Inko, user of attraction of small objects, and the ashen blonde woman, Bakugo Mitsuki, user of glycerin, standing together. Did my mother know them? Junpei thought incredulously as they walked toward them. Hey, Inko-chan, Mitsuki-chan. It's been a while since I last saw you too. Hideko said friendlily as Junpei stood behind his mother in curiosity. I had no idea that my mother knew the mothers of the two main characters, Junpei corrected hurriedly, eyeing both women in wonder. Hideko-chan, it's been a while, Inko said happily to her old friend. Sorry, I couldn't contact with you two for a long time. Hideko apologized with a sad smile. I've been very busy with work, and I'm now able to rest. Of course you were busy. Mitsuki chortled before sobering and looking worried at her. Still though, how's the injury? Hideko caressed her injured torso. I'm getting better day by day. I knew that working as a hero was dangerous, and I accepted it. I was worried when I thought that this injury would render me unavailable to have more kids. She smiled warmly when she looked at her youngest. At least, I'm going to have that dream of me having a big family. Inko and Mitsuki finally noticed Junpei. Is he your other kid? Mitsuki asked. Yes, he's Junpei. She introduced me to them. Say hello to them, Junpei-kun. He slowly walked up to them and bowed politely. Hello, I am Junpei Takahashi. Nice to meet you, he said. He had barely gotten his teeth, and talking was harder than he thought as Japanese wasn't his main language back when he was a Western. Oh, how cute, Inko gushed, crouching down and giving him a hand. I'm your aunt Inko, and I'm also glad to meet you, Junpei-kun. The blonde woman is your aunt Mitsuki. Hey, kiddo. Mitsuki called before focusing on Hideko. How's Genkei, by the way? Haven't heard him much and Masaru's been asking to have a drink with him for months. Oh, Mitsuki-chan. Genkei is working hard with his job and doesn't have enough time to rest unless his sidekicks tell him to take a break. Hideko giggled. And the time he gets a break, you two end up with a second son. Mitsuki chuckled. Well, Hideko caressed Junpei's head with a warm smile. Genkei is passionate, and I know that he also wants more kids. Who knows? Maybe I'll have another kid in a few years. Ha! I bet you'll get another kid. Mitsuki chortled. Having the grown-ups, ironically, he was one to chat. They then heard two voices on the playground. Come on, Izu. Let's go and play heroes and villains. An ashen blonde kid suggested with a green-haired kid following behind. Wait for me, Kaken. Junpei immediately recognized them. Midoriya Izuku and Bakugo Katsuki were playing around cheerfully without the usual spat. Junpei was used to see them. Katsuki was at the age that his quirk explosion haven't yet developed, while Izuku has yet to be depressed because he was going to be diagnosed as quirkless. Unknown to him, he was staring at them, and the three mothers had noticed him, and Inko smiled. Would you like to play? He was slightly taken back, but quickly worked on his face as he nodded at her. Izuku. Oi, Katsuki, come over here. Both kids walked up to their mothers, one looking curious and the other looking slightly irritated. What is it, Mom? Izuku asked softly. Yeah, what is it, old hag? Katsuki said irritably. Junpei wasn't in the least surprised at his attitude and tone to his own mother. What did you say, brat? Mitsuki shouted, pulling Katsuki's ear. Oh, leave me alone, old hag. Ha ha ha, you two are the same. Hideko chuckled fondly seeing the Pomerania-looking mother-son duo. Inko crouched down to her son's height. Izuku, dear, I want you to meet a son of a friend of mine. She then motioned him to Junpei. Izuku stared at him for a moment before Inko continued. Say hi to him, Izuku. I am Midoriya Izuku. He yelped nervously before calming down and rubbing the back of his neck, sheepishly with a raised hand. It's nice to meet you. Junpei smiled at him, knowing that he was this innocent, and he was excruciating friendliness. He accepted the handshake and smiled at him. It's nice to meet you too, Izuku. I am Junpei Takahashi. And I'm Bakugo Katsuki, the ashen blonde kid proclaimed. And I'm going to be the number #1 hero. Nice to meet you too. We were going to be heroes and villains, Katsuki continued, sounding friendlier than he ever thought of. You want to play? Sure, why not? Junpei shrugged. With that said, the three kids ran to the playground and began playing. Junpei hadn't known that he was going to get the chance to meet them at this early stage, but it seemed that there were things that he had yet known apart from what he had saw. If given chance, he should be able to write down everything he remembered and keep it safe. For now, he'll continue playing with them as long as he was going to stay with them. Surprisingly, after some time playing with them, Izuku had given him a nickname much as he gave Kaken to Katsuki. He was nicknamed Jukun, and he was fine with it, and Katsuki had agreed with it. At least, it wasn't the horrible and strange nicknames he had been given during his previous life. Year 2277, 2 years later, age of 4. 2 years had gone by, and he was now 4 years old. This year was important. Why, you ask? That is because at the age of 4, most kids start to develop their quirk. The first one among the kids of the kindergarten, which he started to attend with Izuku and Katsuki, was, as all we know, Katsuki. He had started to pop small explosions on his palm, and many kids as adults were awed at his quirk. Hey, look at this. With these, I'll be the number #1 hero, Katsuki declared arrogantly. Much to Junpei's dread, the other kids and the teachers were fueling his ego by praising and cheering him. So much potential going to be wasted by his pride, Junpei thought grimly. He had tried. He had tried to lessen the praises and trying to get Katsuki's head straight. But Katsuki had brushed him off, and they had fought off, which Izuku tried to work it out. It slightly worked out with the help of their mothers, but the relationship had been not the worst, but not for the best. Weeks after, Junpei finally got the first quirk he had chosen. After speaking with his parents, he had gone to the doctor with Hideko to check on his quirk. Fortunately for him, it wasn't the same doctor he remembered that checked on Izuku. My goodness. This is the first time in my career as a doctor that I had witnessed it. The doctor bellowed shockingly. What is it, Dr. Harada? Hideko asked, slightly concerned if her son hadn't gained any quirk. Coughing, slightly embarrassed of his reaction, the doctor answered calmly. Miss Takahashi, there is nothing wrong with your son. He is perhaps the first patient I had looked at and discovered something extraordinary. How so? Well, from the start, you should know that most kids at early stage who lack the second pinky joint, which only people without quirks are born with, start to develop their quirks at the age of 4 or so. Dr. Harada explained. As it is, we doctors check also if the kids have some kind of mutations, as mutant-type quirks generate different cells, which they'll start to shift into their quirks. Few manage to gain their quirks earlier than anticipated or at a later age. But your son, Miss Takahashi, I have checked 3 times his checkups, and I noticed that your son's genetic cells are developing. Not only 1 quirk, but 2. He has a unique case. Really? Hideko gasped in surprise. Yes. Dr. Harada nodded vigorously. As you might know, there are cases that their kids inherit one of their parents' quirks or both. Rare cases, their offspring can develop a new one. But 1 of million chances that someone can inherit 2 quirks, and so he could be first one to gain a second quirk. So, doctor, do you perhaps know about it? Hideko asked. That's the thing, Dr. Harada began, cleaning his small lenses with a handkerchief. I do not know about it, as it is the first time I heard it. I can theorize that one of the quirks will come soon, but the other might reach at a latter age, such as the late bloomers. Hideko glanced at Junpei, who had been quiet in the entire talking. He, meanwhile, had been tuning out everything his mother and the doctor spoke about, as he didn't need to hear which quirks he would get. He had specifically chosen those 2, and he knew how to use them even before he got them. The only thing he had to be worried about was to train them to the point that it was easy as breathing. Junpei-kun. His mother brought him out of his thought as he looked at her blankly. Could you perhaps show us what quirk had you gotten? With a slow nod, he closed his eyes and tried to concentrate his new awakened quirk. Opening his eyes, Hideko and Dr. Harada stared in awe as Junpei's eyes turned black and his amethyst-colored eyes shone brightly. Just as they were about to speak, they suddenly couldn't feel their seats. Or maybe yet, they weren't feeling like they were sitting on the small stools they were sitting beforehand. Oh, Dr. Harada gaped in surprise. Hideko noticed that her body emitted a thin layer of purple light and intuitively knew that her son's quirk was doing this effect. It's amazing, she said in awe. This is just like my quirk magnet, but instead he can levitate flesh, which my quirk isn't capable of to. I think that your son's quirk can levitate anything that has a mass, Miss Takahashi. Dr. Harada explained, his tone slightly fearful. Also, could you please get us down? I'm not exceptionally good with heights. Nodding slightly, Junpei lowered them to the ground, which the doctor sighed in relief. Well, that is something I hadn't thought of experiencing it. Dr. Harada gasped, adjusting his glasses. In any case, as his quirk focuses much on his eyesight, there is a possibility that there is a limit on how long he can use it. I can probably write a recipe for him, but it might be best to wait and see how it affects him. With a nod, Junpei and Hideko returned to their house, and being received by an eager and anticipating family to hear the news. Well, Genkei began, having impatiently waiting for them after a hard day of work. What did the doctor say? He asked with both kids nodding in agreement. Yeah, Mom, tell us, Kenji urged impatiently. Hideko smiled beatifically. Well, there are good news and, well, strange, which it isn't bad kind of news to inform. Fumiko frowned in confusion. Huh? Good and strange news. Her brother matched her confusion. What does that even mean? Hideko, still her pleasant smile plastered, answered them. Well, the doctor explained us that Junpei-kun is going to have a quirk per se. The kids immediately cheered, hugging their youngest brother. Yay, Junpei-kun is going to have a quirk, Fumiko said joyously. Way to go, brother, Kenji chortled happily, ruffling Junpei's head. Stop it. Junpei half-whined, as while he was an old man in a miner's body. His premature body reacted accordingly as his feelings. Their parents watched the scene in amusement for a moment before Genkei glanced at Hideko. While I'm happy that Junpei has a quirk, what is this? Strange news you mentioned, Yu-chan. The smile dropped down, and she gave a thoughtful look. Well, according to the doctor, she shook her head and looked at her children. Junpei, dear, why don't you show your quirk to the others? The kids stopped cheered, or in Junpei's case whining in embarrassment, and the newly quirked kid nodded. Closing his eyes, the family sans Hideko watched in anticipation what kind of quirk Junpei had gained. Opening his eyes, Genkei, Kenji, and Fumiko gasped in awe that Junpei's eyes turned black with his purple irises lightening like a beacon. Before anybody could speak, they suddenly felt their feet losing the feeling of the floorboard. W.O. Kaya. Huh, Genkei mused, cool like a cucumber, even though he was floating on the air. He silently glanced at Hideko, who hasn't floated like them. It seems that Junpei had inherited a version of your quirk, but instead he is able to float objects that has flesh. The doctor mentioned that it was mostly objects or people that has mass. Hideko explained, watching in amusement that her kids stopped freaking out and began pretending to be flying. We still don't know the drawbacks of it, so we can assume that once he reaches his limit, he might be fatigued or render temporal blindness. Genkei frowned deeply while crossing his arms, even though he was comically floating upside down as his head almost touching the floor. That is something we have to work on, he mused quietly before clapping his hands. All right, we will work this on another day. Now, let's celebrate Junpei's quirk. Yay! Both children cheered. You can lower us down, son. Awa. Once they were lowered, Hideko continued. Still, that wasn't what I was going to tell you, she said, gaining the family's attention. The doctor had told me that Junpei is a special case because, well, that is because he is going to have a second quirk in a few years. That shut them up completely. Their eyes widened in shock and stared at Junpei. A second quirk? Kenji gaped incredulously. Wow, Fumiko mumbled before raising her voice. That's awesome. As the children continued talking, Genkei walked next to his wife. Did the doctor tell you something else? He asked, continuing with their previous conversation. Hideko shook her head. No, mostly because this is the first case that somebody had gained two quirks. Inherited or mutated quirks are normally how it is, but she glanced at her youngest son. There hasn't even ever a time that somebody had carried a second quirk, although she instinctively placed a hand on her fading injury. Genkei placed a hand on her shoulder and squeezed in assurance. Don't worry for now. Try to recuperate for some time before thinking about work. Your sidekicks are working in your place, and they are holding the district just fine. She nodded. Yeah. Unknown to them, Junpei had heard them and pondered their words. It felt that it was something important, and he knew from his years of experience that these kinds of conversation ended up having him meet the challenge head-on. So, Genkei's voice and clap brought him out of his thought, and the children looked at their father. While Junpei has earned his quirk, the problem now is naming it. Oh, right. Keiji pounded his fist on his open hand in realization. That's important. What do you think, sis? Fumiko crossed her arms and hummed thoughtfully. Well, his eyes light up and darken whenever he uses. Why not magic eyes? Everyone turned to Junpei, who had suggested the name. Unknowingly for them, the name had been before he was born, and since he had chosen 2 quirks, it may be better for him to combine those 2 quirks with a different one. Why not? Genkei said. It is slightly better to be called telekinesis or something else, as there are few people that has that kind of quirk. Also, the doctor mentioned about a second quirk, so it would be better to change it later. Hideko added. That's right. Then it is decided. Let's celebrate Junpei's quirk. Yay. Wash your hands beforehand. Yes, Dad. Oh. The day after, Junpei made his way toward the kindergarten and announced that he had gained quirk, which most kids, Izuku and Katsuki included, asked to show them his quirk. After discovering that his quirk was related to telekinesis, the kids were on him and asking him to make them fly again, but fortunately for him, the teachers had stopped them to continue with their daily routines. Unfortunately for him, the teachers were amazed and cheered for him much like how they acted with Katsuki. But he tuned them out as it would only render him stupid and overconfident, which he didn't need to be soaked in their words. Still though, making them fly around with Izuku and Katsuki included, they pretended to be heroes. While most people would think that it is troublesome to do it, Junpei thinks of it as training. He could discover what's his limits and stretching his duration, which it would be a bonus during battles and trainings. He watched as Izuku squirmed impatiently, waiting for the day of his examination in anticipation. He felt slightly guilty that when he discovers that he is quirkless, his dream would fall down. Are you nervous, Izuku? Junpei asked, while the other kids were playing around. Why yeah, Mum said that next month I'll go to the doctor and check if I have a quirk, he said, his eyes shining like a beacon of hope. Then I'll be able to be a hero like you and Kaken. Junpei gave him a forced smile, which luckily he didn't notice. That's good, he answered, trying to not sound forced. We then heard Katsuki scoffed amusedly. Don't be an idiot, Juken. Junpei still was not used to hearing him use a normal nickname, but quickly shook it off. While you two think that you are capable of being a hero, I'll be the #1 hero with my quirk, he declared confidently. Rolling his eyes, Junpei sighed. Whatever you say, Kaken. Yes, he had been using Katsuki's nickname for some time and still wasn't used to. Kids' nicknames will stuck with you forever, no matter how long you try to forget. Still though, he'll be able to tease him with his nickname in the future. But for now, he'll be happy with what he has. Oh. Days passed by and summer had begun. Katsuki had bragged that he could do anything better than the others, but the first person that he bragged on was Izuku. Ignorant or innocent of his action, Izuku accepted it either way, but Junpei wasn't happy about it. On day, they were playing with another 2 kids with a ball in the park. Katsuki showed them how good he was with the play, kicking and making tricks with it, which he ended up bragging and relishing the praises of his 2 lackeys. Junpei wouldn't even think that these 2 were friends and were more like lackeys. Izuku had tried to play with the ball too. Unfortunately, he wasn't at best with it, and eventually fell on his buttocks. The 2 kids that joined Katsuki laughed at him, including Katsuki. Izuku, you really can't do anything, can you? Katsuki asked, holding his orange ball under his arm. Kaken, that was mean. Junpei disapproved completely. Hey, it's not my problem if he couldn't do it, he answered, which then raised a green bucket with Izuku's name. See? You can read the characters for Izuku as Deku, you know. The 2 kiddos were awed at Katsuki's ability to read. Kaken, you can read. You can't? Katsuki scoffed before looking at Izuku. And Deku means someone who cannot do anything. Hey, watch it, Junpei warned, putting in front of Izuku. That is not how a hero should act. Katsuki narrowed his eyes at him, but did not do anything. With a single scoff, he went on his way with his 2 lackeys behind. Shaking his head, he turned around and looked at Izuku. You all right? Izuku nodded quietly with a forced smile. Why, yeah, thanks, Juken. You know that you need to step up if you don't want to be treated like that, Izu. Junpei sighed. Fortunately for being a kid was that his brain absorbed information quite quickly, which with the mind of an adult, he abused of it and tried to be more intelligent. Why yeah, I know, but it's Kaken, so, he hedged uncomfortably. Junpei sighed again, this time dropping this down. I know, Izu, I know. But you must understand that Kaken is, well, Kaken. There is a limit of how of a butt he can be. Of course he wouldn't curse in front of him, and if he ever was going to be blamed, He can pass it to his brother, as he had heard him curse one in the middle of his game. Really, for someone that was told not to curse in the house, Keiji can really be stupid sometimes. Yeah? Well, let's go and play something. That'll cheer you up. Junpei grinned, trying to cheer him up. A small smile formed on Izuku's face, and it was a small win for him. Another day passed by, and they were now at the river skipping stones. Most of the kids that joined Katsuki made 2 or 3 skips before the stones sunk down. Katsuki himself. Izuku tried next, but with a lack of skill, the stone immediately sunk down without any skips. Which, unfortunately and expected, Katsuki and his lackeys began laughing at him. Junpei frowned in disapproval before grabbing one stone on the ground and stood quietly in front of the edge of the river. The mocking stopped at once, and he had gathered their attention. Good. While he hadn't had the experience throwing in this body, his mind had gathered the experience of him having thrown small pellets or similar objects before. He positioned in a throwing stance and breathed deeply with his closed eyes. Once he opened, he swung his arm downward and let the stone free, and started skipping. 1, 2, 3, 4. The kids watched in awe as the stone continued skipping over the water. 5, 6, 7. Katsuki's eyes widened in shock. 8, 9, and finally, the stone sunk down. Still in post-throwing pose, Junpei straightened up, glanced at Katsuki over his shoulder, and smirked victoriously at him. While Katsuki growled at being placed in second, his lackeys cheered in awe at him, with Izuku joining in. Whoa, you did 9. That was awesome. You did more than Katsuki. Junpei watched Katsuki and expected his reaction. His eyes widened, shocked that he had gone from first place to second, and Junpei could feel the rage starting to form up slowly, until his eyes blazed in rage. He had expected him to curse out and howl on his face, but something out of him character. He stopped, which unnerved him completely. I thought he would curse at me for stealing his place. Junpei thought with a raised eyebrow. Just as he wondered, Katsuki walked toward him, stopping just away from his personal place, and stabbed his finger on his chest with a rictus smile and twitchy eye. You are going down, one of these days. You hear me? He declared through gritted teeth. I will beat you, and I declare you my rival. You and me. This is just the beginning of me beating your butt. Junpei's eyes widened slightly before thinking about it. While it was not so bad that he was declared his rival, that spot was supposed to be Izuku's, but thinking back, he had yet to be worthy of being his rival, unless he was prepared. He grinned challengingly at him. Is that so? Yeah, you are going down. After that day, days after days, Katsuki had stubbornly challenged him in many things, which ended up him losing everyday time. Damn it! Katsuki cursed aloud one day playing on Junpei's house. They were at the moment playing Super Smash Bros. Keiji's, not his, and Katsuki had lost 3 times against him. For obvious reason, he had chosen Bowser as his main character. As for him, well, he was using Snake, and he was kicking 9 shade of asses. The last character that was released is Toon Link for this timeline. This control is shit, Katsuki raged as he tossed forcefully on the ground. At the same time that Keiji entered the living room and saw Katsuki. Oi, brat! What the hell are you doing to my joystick? Keiji howled angrily as he pinched Katsuki's cheek as he retaliated back. Leave me alone, dog breath. Junpei sighed, while Izuku and Fumiko laughed at the interaction between them. But Junpei knew that it wasn't going to last, as Izuku had told him that tomorrow was the day that he was going to be checked. 2 days later, Junpei had seen how devastated Izuku looked like. His eyes widened in shock and despair, stiff as a board, and a stricken smile that Junpei wouldn't want to know how he felt. He would have comforted him, trying to cheer him up by inviting him to his home, had it not been because of the idiotic teacher that announced that Izuku was quirkless to all the class. Damn that idiot, Junpei groaned inwardly, face palming at the sheer stupidity of the teacher. After that revelation, every kid of the class began bullying and isolating Izuku. But he wouldn't let them do as they please, as he shielded him from the others and glared, which unnerved everyone except for Katsuki. Nobody played or talked with Izuku except for him, and he was okay with it. Them. Apart from being ignorant fools, he didn't know most of them personally. Sure, he knows some of their names and such, but they were beneath the main characters that he would know in the future. After that, he had invited Izuku to his home, and while he played with his siblings, he had talked to his parents about what happened today. Sure, his parents were livid when they heard that because of a teacher, Izuku's life had worsened completely. So, Hideko and Inko went to the principal office and made a scandalous scene which the principal had no other option to fire the man for his foolishness. Although Junpei would have assumed that if not, the Ministry of Education would have done more drastic measures, which the principal wouldn't want to happen to his school. But nothing could be done as the mark has been carved on the stone, letting Izuku's confidence drop down marginally. But Junpei won't let that happen, even if Katsuki continued reminding him of his quirkless status. Nevertheless, their friendship had slightly gotten better, for the better words, and Junpei had tried to lessen Katsuki's cockiness and growing Izuku's confidence. It had yet grown something that it is noticeable, but it will do time. But that relationship sunk down again when that day occurred. Junpei, Izuku and Katsuki had gone with another 2 of Katsuki's lackeys to catch beetles. Katsuki, as always, decided to lead the group while waving a small branch of wood, while his 2 lackeys followed behind. Izuku and Junpei stood on the rear, but followed on their paces to not get left behind. They reached to a mossy log and Katsuki began walking on the surface, but he lost his footing on the slippery surface and began falling down. In panic, everyone cried out in shock at him falling, but Junpei quickly used his quirk to lessen the fall without saying that he was using his quirk. Either way, he fell with a quick splash and Junpei noticed that he wasn't injured. The 2 lackeys sighed in relief, but Izuku descended quickly and Junpei followed behind. The lackeys, ignorant that Izuku and Junpei had gone down, called out if Katsuki was injured or so. Katsuki had brushed off braggingly that he was fine before he noticed the greenette in front of him. "Are you all right? Can you stand?" Izuku asked worriedly, offering him a hand. Junpei stood not far from them. "It would have been bad if you hit your head." Junpei didn't know how, but he had noticed that Katsuki's eyes had widened slightly, and his brain began forming an imaginary situation that instead of Izuku helping him, he was mocking him. It was simply basic human decency, and the heart to be worried for others. But he had seen it like a weakness or insult. Wordlessly, Katsuki slapped Izuku's hand away and began making his way back home. Jesus. What did I deserve to be their friends? Junpei sighed before calling Izuku and the others to go back home. After that day, he had gone home and began working on his personal project. He had begun to train the other aspects of his quirk before the second began surfacing on his body. His first power of telekinesis wasn't so difficult to make use of, as he had many times to train, while it was counted as chores, helping his brother and sister. The time he uses has drastically raised up, and his migraine had lessened down marginally, which he can use it for an hour and a half. The next one had been summoning some sentient skeleton skulls, but nothing had happened. He had yet to feel something from them, and he sensed that either his summons weren't ready yet, or have yet to wake up. After that, he had come up with the last thing he remembered about his magic eyes quirk: teleportation. Well, he knew little about that quirk, as he remembered only one character that had a teleportation quirk, and he was on the other side of the law. Still though, teleportation was a useful quirk, and the rarity made it quite clear that it was advantageous in many ways. He would try to think about it during battles, or how he could use it. If he recalled what he had read about the description of the teleportation, he had to think about a place that he wanted to be wherever he wanted to appear. He hummed quietly while staying seated in the living room, watching TV. His father had arrived early from work and stayed with his mother at the kitchen. Keiji and Fumiko were doing their own things in their respective rooms until Hideko walked out of the kitchen to call her children. "Kids, it's dinner time. Go and wash your hands." "Yes, Mom," they all chorused in sync while making their way to the restroom. Once seated, Junpei's mind had tuned his family most of their conversation, while he mindlessly ate and thought at the same time. Teleportation. If I imagine the place I want to be, I should be able to get there, Junpei mused in contemplation. Let's see if I can teleport between Izuku's or Katsuki's house. He then began putting the image on his head, standing in front of their houses. The image of one of the houses appeared inside his head, and he could feel the pull to appear in front of one of them, and just as he was about to blink there. "Mom, can we go to the park to play?" Fumiko's voice turned his image into the park that the family recognized daily, and in the sudden form, Junpei disappear. Clank. The Takahashi household watched in dumbfounded that where Junpei usually sat to eat with them suddenly disappeared, and his chopsticks had clattered on the table, with the owner nowhere to be seen. "Junpei!" Keiji shouted, bolting onto his feet. The family joining him at gasping in disbelief. "Where did he go?" Hideko shouted worriedly. "Junpei!" Fumiko called out her sibling. Genkei immediately turned his nose to a canine and began sniffing the air to locate his son and later to chastise him. Meanwhile, with Junpei. This is troublesome," Junpei mused quietly as his feet weren't on the ground. Instead, He was hanging on a branch on the tallest tree of the park by his shirt. He did not know why he had chosen on a tree instead of the ground. Did he picture the day that he and Katsuki had competed on who could get on the tree fastest, and his memory got him into the place that he recognized that he stood before? Should it be because I picture my point of view over the tree instead of the ground? He hummed before shrugging, or trying to shrug as he remained still on the branch. Still, his thoughts were brought how a child, preferably calling himself a man, but because of how he was right now, he couldn't say much. Had now a family when his previous life. He was an orphan brought to a family by a man who he would call a teacher and father figure. He didn't have much in his previous life, but life had took a turn with him, having a life with a lovable family. Before he could continue musing about his family, his father had appeared just under the tree with a worried expression. Although Junpei was slightly freaked out how his face morphed from a hound to a human. Guess he should now get used to how this world changed the characteristics of said person. Junpei, hold still, Genkei called, his arms morphing into a bird and helping him down. He could have simply used his quirk to descend, but he was suddenly feeling tired, and as soon as his father laid him down, he had fallen asleep. I should probably work this out. With those final thoughts, Sandman had taken him. The next day was simple enough, except that his family had freaked out about his disappearance and asked him about it. He lied about that he felt a pull in his mind, and he was suddenly on the branch. His parents had wondered about the full extent of his ability, as neither of them had a family member with a teleportation quirk. While the kids wowed at Junpei's sudden capability to teleport, his parents knew the danger of having such power, as it could be advantageous on both sides of the law. For now, he had promised them that he wouldn't use it unless it was necessary, and he had worked out with it. While reluctant, they agreed and continued with their days normally. Just so happened that Junpei planned something to use it fully. Ginger Karate Girl. Days passed by, and he continued testing with his quirk, while his mother watched his usage of quirk, and even giving some tips as her quirk had the same aspect as him. While most of this training was with his mother or teaching him slightly as his age was hard for the body to compel completely. They did it barely half an hour before Junpei slumped down wearily. Damn, this premature body, Junpei thought irritably, panting wearily. To think that I'm left in this state after half an hour of training. At least, it is a new experience for me learning with my mother. You did well, Jun-kun. Yes, you did. Hageko gushed as she used a towel to wipe his sweat off his forehead. Why don't we go and see Izuku after a bath? Junpei smiled. Yeah, mama. With that, Junpei was left in the caravan while she went to get his brother and sister and get groceries for dinner. They had been playing heroes with Inko as the helpless civilian. As expected, Izuku had disguised himself as All Might in an onesie while he was. Well, from what he had known, he was disguised as All Might's current sidekick, Sir Nightai. He simply grabbed glasses with the lenses, a tie, and barely brushed his hair to match his style. Izuku had asked what I was pretending to be, and I simply told him that I was someone that All Might knew. And he even asked how I knew it. And I simply lied to him that his parents had told him stories about All Might. In any case, they continued playing with other things apart from being heroes. Junpei could feel that even if Izuku was trying to pretend that it was fine, the news about his status had him force a smile on him, which he basically hated it. Kids, would you like sandwiches? Inko asked from the kitchen. Yes, Izuku called out, holding an All Might figure. All right, kids, just wait for a moment. Junpei watched Izuku, while holding another toy and pretending it was the villain, on how he felt. Izuku stopped playing his toys and noticed him staring. Jokun. His voice was so low and defeated, lacking the warmness that he was used to. He hated it. He hated how a great guy like him was brought to this state. Like the original canon, without him, he would have been worse than anyone would have imagined it. He almost believed the alternative versions of him. Why, yeah, Aiken, he hedged warily, having given him a new nickname since Deku was not something he should say it until much later. Do you? Izuku paused hesitantly, like trying to come up with a better word. Do you think that I can be a hero without a quirk? Junpei gulped silently. Of course, he would have asked that question. He didn't have yet an answer, but he could feign ignorance for now. Why, you ask? Why me? Izuku shook his head dejectedly. It's just, most kids at school tell me that I can't be a hero, and pushed me aside. Everyone but you. He looked at him in the eyes. And God, his eyes, spoke volume of how he didn't wish for him to be pushed away. His last close friend. Can I really be someone like All Might? There was a tense silence. silence which both of them hated it. Junpei understood a part that All Might spoke to him. That heroism wasn't something that anybody should be. But on the other hand, that was rubbish and ironic. Rubbish, because being a hero didn't mean that someone with a cape was a hero per se, and the others should remain safe. Every life is a danger and a challenge that everyone must overcome. And ironic, because that bastard that thinks of him as the symbol of peace had the gall to tell another one that heroism was dangerous when he was quirkless before being picked up. He might respect the man for what he does, but there is a limit of idiocy. Sigh. What he was going to do. Anyways, Izuku remained quiet, obviously still waiting for an answer, which he now had. You want an answer, Aiken? Junpei asked softly, which Izuku nodded. I'll be honest with you. You are not ready yet. Izuku was about to bawl his eyes out until he heard the yet and looked at him in confusion. Huh? What do you mean, Jukun? He sighed in relief that Izuku hadn't cried out yet. Listen, Aiken, you must understand that being a hero is hard. You get me there? Izuku slightly nodded, but there was the confusion in his eyes. You see, if you want to be a hero, you have to train. But I don't have a quirk, Izuku pointed out dejectedly. Junpei sighed. Aiken, having a quirk doesn't mean that someone can be a hero. Anyone with the right mind can be a hero. He then thought about it as there were comics, and had a character that he could respect despite that he got interested in those when he was an adult and could share with him. A week ago, I found an old comic that my dad had boxed and read about it. It was about man wearing a bat cowl with the name Batman. Whoa. At least, Izuku was interested in that. Batman was a hero that protected his city from villains, thugs, and evildoers during night, he continued. He made friends, allies, and even had a lover. Wow, he was a hero. That is cool, Izuku mumbled in awe. I wonder what his quirk was. SNRK, okay, he was a little bad that he snorted, but it was ironic that he asked that. Sorry? I still haven't told you that he was a normal being, which means he was quirkless. Just like you. Huh? Izuku asked incredulously. You see, Aiken, being a hero doesn't mean having a flashy quirk and beat down villains. Junpei pointed at his chest, where his heart was. It is the heart of the hero, the desire to help others out of selflessness. The others. Teachy, they do it for fame and popularity. All Might does it because he wants to help. You understand the difference? I think so. There is something I learned from my brother and sister. I added. Most of the villains aren't evil as you think of. Why is that? Izuku asked skeptically. You cannot see the world in white and black. He explained. You must understand that villains aren't evil like most think. Some of them did out of desperation. Others were treated so bad that it was the only thing he could do. And most of them were misunderstood. Like Gang Orca. Even if he is a hero, people still fear him. Huh, I didn't think about it like that. Izuku mused, contemplating everything. So, Junpei bellowed dramatically, which got Izuku's attention. As your friend, I'll ask my parents and have us go somewhere to train. Izuku's lit up sparkly. You would do that for me? He asked eagerly. Junpei nodded in agreement with a smile. Of course, I would do. We're friends, and that is what friends should do, he declared firmly. Put up your chest up and smile like All Might. Both kids smiled like the hero and laughed joyfully. Sometimes, there were times that it was worth it. Unknowingly for them, Inko was leaning on the door with a plate of sandwiches listening everything that her son and her nephew had spoken. Much to her dismay that her son and Mitsuki's weren't going to be good friends, at least Hideko's son fulfilled where she couldn't. After hours of playing at the Midoriya's household, it was nighttime and time for him to return home. Hideko had come to bring Junpei back, and as they were about to leave, Inko called him. Junpei, come. Junpei and Hideko looked at Inko in confusion, but he replied. Yes, Aunt Inko. She walked toward him, crouched down, and gave him an unexpected hug, which confused them completely. Thank you, Junpei-kun. Thank you for being with Izuku. Hideko tilted her head in confusion, but she knew that there was something that has happened during her absence. After a few moments later, Inko released him and stood up with teary but melancholic eyes. I know that the other kids at school aren't good friends with Izuku, but you, she breathed, tearing up. Despite his quirkless status, you remained with him. I'm thankful because of it. Hideko smiled at her son's action. She and her husband didn't approve on how society shunned the quirkless and how they acted toward those that were different. She knew just as her husband. That was because they had friends that were mutant-type quirks, and they were the second most discriminated after the quirkless. Just because they were different from others, they were targeted relentlessly. Still, for her son to be acceptable toward those that were born quirkless, it brought her pride and eager to see how he was going to grow up. Aunt Inko. Both women were brought short when they noticed Junpei's face. Hideko by far had seen many expressions on her sons and daughter, but seeing this kind of determination on his age wasn't something she expected at all. "Why can't I be Izuku's friend?" Junpei asked, sounding half childish, half serious. Being a 4-year-old kid, capable to speaking like an adult, was odd enough to be suspicious, and he should still pretend being a kid. Izuku is Izuku, no matter if he has or not. Am I wrong? Inko gave another teary hug and sobbed quietly, muttering thank you repeatedly. Hideko gave them both a moment with a small smile, but pride and joy building inside her. While the three people remained outdoor, they hadn't noticed a small kid who had eavesdropped them from the first time and began rushing toward his room. Getting under his blanket, Izuku was happy. Not happy, more than happy, he was ecstatic. Yes, ecstatic that he had one friend that didn't push him away, who did not shun him like the others, who believed in him and was going to help him to become a hero. Today, Izuku had the greatest day of his life, and even if he was quirkless, he knew that someone had his back. After leaving Midoriya's apartment, Junpei and Hideko walked toward their home in silence. After a few minutes, Hideko broke the silence. "I'm proud of you, you know." Junpei looked up to his mother to see her smile in a prideful manner. Not the overconfident type, but the warm type. "I'm proud that my son isn't as naive as I thought," she elaborated. They both stopped, and she crouched down, looking straight at his eyes. "You are going to be a great hero one day, Junpei-kun." He felt. He didn't know. He wanted to cry, but it wasn't tears of sadness, but happiness. Like he had never cried before. Except the time that he was dying. Okay, moment ruined. Although he ruined the moment with his thoughts, his eyes were crying without a sob. With a small smile, Hideko wiped the tears and continued making their way home. Hideko was happy, and nothing could ever think of his son otherwise. "Mom? HM?" she titled downward, looking at her son. "Can I train with Aiken somewhere together?" She smiled, agreeing with that idea. "Of course, I'll speak with your father about it. You have my promise." "Thanks, Mom." "Yeah, nothing would." Oh. A week passed by, but the waiting was worth it. Jinkei and Hideko had talked together about training somewhere with Izuku, and they had persuaded Inko to take Izuku with them and get into a dojo for them and train. It wasn't a surprise that Junpei's brother and sister, Keiji and Fumiko, had begun training as soon as they started elementary school if they wanted to get into UA. Not surprising that his family were all heroes, and they were following their dreams behind. It was hard for them to look for some place to train 4-year-old kids, but they managed to find one. But it was a good plan if he was sincere. Why do you ask? Well, one, Izuku's body is as frail as a toothpick, not being offensive to him, and he needed the training to be able to defend himself against thugs or bullies. 2, it was planned for him to train his body and be able to control his future quirk, the one for all, without getting the lashbacks. And 3, it would be funny to see Katsuki's face when Izuku is able to defend against him without a quirk, and have him train more. In hindsight, it's 20/20 for him, and a win-win situation. Today, his father had decided to guide them toward the dojo they were going to start. Junpei glanced at Izuku, and he noticed that he was excited to train, which can be considered that with his dream on the line. He needed to push his limits and make his dreams come true. "Dad, where are we going?" Junpei asked, noticing that his father shivered in nostalgia and terror. Those two emotions didn't work well together. "Well, I took the liberty to talk to someone I knew before and asked him to train you too," Genkei answered, rubbing the back of his head sheepishly. Why didn't it assure him at all? "We're here." Junpei looked up, and he was surprised, awed, astonished. Well, whatever. The thing was that he was looking at the biggest dojo that he had seen. The only type of dojo that had the same structure were in movies, comics, or places that the Yakuza lives on. He looked left, all concrete wall with green pagodas aligning next to each together. He looked right, same. I looked up and saw the sign hanging on the large double door. Unbreakable Dojo. Strange name for one. I guess there must be a story behind that naming. They walked up to the large door and Genkei loudly knocked the giant door. After a few seconds, the doors were open, and they were welcomed at the sight of a large man wearing a black gi. If Junpei was sincere, the man literally looked like Heihachi Mishima from Tekken, but with more hair. His hair, the part that had 2 antennae like pointing at the back of his head, It was much longer, which was hanged in a ponytail. His height was rated 6'4", 1.93 m, which was taller than his father. His height was 6'0", 1.83 m. Before he could continue with his thought, the man bellowed a laugh which shook the air around. Ha ha ha. Well, look at that, if it isn't my old intern Takahashi. I haven't seen you much of you since I retired, but either way it's good to see you again, kiddo. It's been a while. Genkei bowed politely. Yes, it has been quite long since I last saw you. I had little time to visit after you opened your own dojo for those who wanted to train. He looked around. It seems that it has gotten better. The old man scoffed. Of course, it has. And what did I tell you about that crap of formality? I ain't a man that needs formalities to make myself better than others. Call me like old times. Well, if I say it like that, I'm feeling like an old man. That comment made him and Izuku giggle childishly. Junpei could respect someone like him. Say, he drawled out, glancing at them. Who are they, Genkei? Genkei blinked in realization, smiled at his supposed teacher, crouched down to the kid's height, and placed his hands over their heads. This is my son, Takahashi Junpei, and his friend, Midoriya Izuku. I am Midoriya Izuku, sir? He stuttered nervously while bowing. I am Takahashi Junpei. He followed behind without the stutter. The man eyed them silently, crossing his eyes before nodding in approval. This reminds me of you, and that friend of yours when you first interned with me. He chuckled mirthfully. All right, kiddos, the name's Kanseki Arata. So what pleasure brings me my old intern here in my dojo with his son and his friend, HM. And it decided to put a name for the dojo's grandmaster instead of Zack. For those that don't get Japanese names at all, Arata Kanseki means fresh diamond. Well, a week ago my son asked Hideko-chan if he could train with his friend. Knowing fully that they wanted to become heroes, we talked about where we could send them to train, and I recalled that you had opened a dojo a few years ago and called you here. We talked with Izuku's mother and persuaded that to be prepared. He needed the training. Genkei explained. Hey champ, good. You finally used that brain of yours. Arata chortled, earning a deadpan from Genkei and childish giggles from Izuku and Junpei. He glanced at the kids, and they returned back, noticing the desire to become heroes. Something that any others shamefully using the term heroes didn't have. I see the fire in them. Arata nodded. All right, I think I can work with them. So, what can you tell me about their quirks? My son had his quirk checked last week, and we called Magic Eyes. I know. It's a stupid name, but we can work it out, and it's similar to Hideko-chan's magnet quirk. But he can levitate organics too, or anything that has mass. Genkei explained before cringing. As for, well, Izuku, he is quirkless. Arata glanced sorrowfully at Izuku, which he looked down, not wanting to be reminded of his quirkless status. But he shook it off immediately and stared determined at Arata, and he was surprised by it. This kid, Arata thought before nodding. All right, quirk or not, that is not a problem here. I vow in my honor that I'll train these two kiddos to fully pledged heroes. He stated firmly, which earned an eager Izuku before he clapped loudly. All right, enough of this crap about that. Let's get inside and get you to your application, shall we? He said before entering his dojo and the others following behind. Just as they walked inside, Genkei mumbled. So nostalgic and terrifying his training. Arata stopped mid-walk and glared over his shoulder at Genkei. What was that? He growled menacingly. And nothing. I didn't say anything. Genkei yelped fearfully. Junpei was quite confused. Who was this old man, and how come that his father feared him? He understood that he mentioned something about an intern, but it was better to forget this moment and maybe use it as a blackmail. Walking inside, they noticed many families with their kids waiting, probably those that wanted to take part of the dojo and train. Izuku was in awe, while Junpei expressed with a not bad expression. Hey, you two must be the last one. Junpei and Izuku turned to the female voice that spoke to them. Junpei immediately noticed the ginger-haired girl that had a small ponytail tied to the side of her head, and the green eyes. I didn't think that I would meet her until we entered Yua. Junpei mused quietly. Then again, I would probably meet others before entering at that time. I am Kendo Itsuka. It's nice meeting you too. She greeted warmly. I'm Takahashi Junpei. Same. He smiled. I'm Midoriya Izuku, and nice to meet you too, Kendo-san. He stuttered politely, internally screaming over talking to a girl. Itsuka glanced at Izuku oddly before leaning on Junpei. Is he always like this? She whispered. Junpei shrugged. Not always, but it does when he speaks with girls. Izuku reddened in embarrassment. Jeiju-kun. She didn't have to know that. Itsuka giggled on her hand in amusement. You two must be close. Junpei rolled his eyes playfully. You don't know the half of it. Ever since I met him 2 years ago, I have to be the responsible one. Not like the other. He grunted in disapproval. Itsuka raised an eyebrow in confusion on how he voiced out in slight venom when he mentioned the other, but didn't bring that up as she noticed the uncomfortable expression of Izuku's. Anyways, you are here to learn how to fight, right? A friend of my dad recommended this place, telling him that it was one of the best places to train. So here I am, about to learn to kick butts, she declared. The two childhood friends laughed at her excitement. So, what are your quirks? She asked as her hands began enlarging slightly. Mine is big hands, which, as you can see, I can grow my hand bigger than normal. Junpei noticed how Izuku was uneasy with it, so he began, making his eyes lose the white sclere to black and his amethyst pupil shining like a beacon. Mine is magic eyes, capable of levitating anything. So cool, Itsuka said in awe before looking in expectation at Izuku. What about you? That did kill the moment as Izuku looked down dejectedly and Junpei sighed. About that. Hey, if it isn't the worthless Deku. The three kids turned to the source of the voice, and their reactions were varied. Itsuka looked confused, but the way the kid talked about Izuku didn't put her well. Izuku didn't muster to talk but remained slightly firm. But Junpei, he literally snarled at the fatso of a bully that followed Katsuki all the time. There it was, Yujiko Zashi, the plump child with the pterodactyl quirk. Unfortunately, he had gotten fatter than before, which his wings barely managed to support him at all. Zashi, Junpei growled, frowning in irritation at one of many bullies. Deku, the worthless kid, and the one who wanted to be a hero. How can you be a hero when you're quirkless? The fat kid mocked, his cheeks flapping on every move. That commentary made a few of the families whisper and look at Izuku, stepping away like if he was a disease. It sickened Junpei completely. Genkei frowned in disapproval on how the kid acted. Nobody should act like that and pretend to be a hero. That is not something a hero would do. Zashi, that's not nice. His mother, slightly fatter than her son, spoke with little hint of chastise, which meant that even she was a quirkish bitch. But it's true. He defended himself, looking at his mother and pointing at Izuku. Oh, Zashi, Zashi, Zashi. The fat pterodactyl flinched when he noticed Junpei glaring at him with a mischievous smirk, which all kids of his age were used to. I didn't take you for being heroic too, you know. With that body of yours, you can barely lift yourself. What are you going to do if you become one? Press the villains with your fatness, he chuckled, Itsuka snickering behind and Izuku barely holding a snort. The other families and his father snickered under their breath with Genkei holding his breath with his hand. Takahashi, Zashi hissed embarrassedly. I'm not fat, I'm big-boned. Keep saying that if you believe it. Junpei scoffed. Young man, it is not nice to speak like that to my dear Zashi. His mother scolded him, finally putting an expression on her face. It is also not nice talking to my friend like that, Junpei retorted. Alas, it is true. When we were kids, he barely flied on the air, and now that he looks fatter, even his quirk can't stand it. That earned another unhidden snicker around them. Why you? The lady snarled, raising a hand before another hand grabbed her wrist. She was about to snap out of the person who grabbed her hand before paling, when she realized that the person who grabbed her wrist was the owner of the place, Kongseki Arata. What is the meaning of this, ma'am? Were you about to strike a child? He asked, not demanded, glaring at the cowering woman. He even emitted killing intent that a few families reacted. Izuku and Itsuka reacted accordingly, getting behind Junpei, who slightly shivered and cowered behind. I, she stammered fearfully, getting all the kai on her. Zashi wasn't even feeling better as Junpei noted the small puddle forming between his legs. I can see now that he is not a material in this dojo. He continued, releasing her wrist and turning around. You and your son are not welcome here. You can leave to the front door. With that, he began walking inside. The woman barely managed to get her wits before yelling at the man. Why you dare? The nerve of you! How could you not teach my dear Zashi, you all? She stopped on her mid-rant when Arata halted and glared over his shoulder, focusing his kai on her, which frightened even more. Zashi's mother trembled even more when Arata put himself in front of her. I won't tolerate this kind of attitude for those that joins this dojo. I won't teach brats that lack sense of honor and morale. So if you won't kindly leave this place, I'll make you. He growled menacingly. Fine, she yelped, managing to gather the little wits she had and grabbed Zashi's hand. We're leaving. We can always find a better place rather than here, taking classes with those kids. She glared over the kids that mocked her dear Zashi. Fuck you too, Lady Junpei thought with a deadpan expression. Izuku gave her a blank stare, while Itsuka stuck her tongue out and pulled down her eyelids at the old hag. Junpei then noticed a few families left with her, but most remained in the dojo. I guess there are other families that knows what he was talking about or something. Arata huffed before inspecting the remaining families. All right, with that done, for those who wants to join, come inside, and I'll get your registration. The families followed Arata inside. Itsuka remained with Junpei and Izuku, while Itsuka's father talked to Genkei. It's nice of my daughter to befriend here, Itsuka's father said to Genkei. The man was fair-skinned and had long orange hair, teal-colored eyes, and a matching stubble. I'm Kendo Itsuki, nice to meet you. Genkei raised an eyebrow, processing the name. Itsuki? And your daughter's name is? I know. You named your kid after yourself, and changed one letter of her name. My wife left me in charge of her name and well, I had a hard time with it. The man named Itsuki chuckled in embarrassment. Genkei chuckled in amusement. Yeah, I get you. I left the names of my first son and daughter to my wife. I came up with my second son who's talking with you, daughter. The name's Takahashi Genkei. It's nice to meet you. Likewise. Itsuki frowned in realization. Aren't you? Yes, I'm a hero. He admitted with a nod. I'm currently on my day off, and I decided to take my kid and his friend here. The master over there is an old acquaintance during my youth. Ah, I see. Itsuki nodded in understatement. What brings you here with your daughter? Genkei asked, eyeing at the kids chatting amicably. Apart from training, well, my daughter dreamed to become a hero, and she decided to train to become one. He chuckled humorously. I knew someone who used to come here and told me about it. I was interested in it, to which I decided to have her train here. What about you? Well, my kid got his quirk weeks ago, and he was fine with it at first, but then, he frowned sadly, watching Izuku laughing with his childhood friend and new one. His friend wasn't so lucky. Ah, Itsuki nodded solemnly. As I heard before, he was born quirkless. I can understand the grievance of it. I had friends too, that it would seem. Genkei sighed, rubbing his head. But one day, my wife explained that Junpei, he cracked a small smile, recalling what they talked about. Junpei was fine with him being a quirkless, and he decided to help him to become heroes, It reminds me much of his mother. As the fathers talked to each other, the kids remained chatting. That was something you don't see every day. Itsuka commented, slightly awed at how Arata put the woman down. I wonder if that is his quirk. If not, I want to learn that. I have to agree on that. Junpei nodded. I don't know. It seems kind of excessive. Izuku hedged unsurely. Well, you are a cinnamon roll, as many people would say now or in the future, especially from my previous world. But I wonder how he would act if he had that kind of Kai. Junpei mused before speaking. Still though, I want to do it and see how I can paralyze villains with it. It would be impressive. Izuku and Itsuka thought about it and laughed at the imagination. Junpei. The three stopped and turned around to see Genkei walking toward his son and crouched down. Yes, Dad? Junpei asked, raising an eyebrow. Son, I understand that what you did was because of Izuku. Genkei began. But talking like that to his mother was wrong, you understand. But Genkei raised his hand to interrupt him. Let me finish first. While what you did was wrong, defending a friend wasn't. He said with smile. I'm proud of you of what you are becoming. Junpei felt it again. The feeling when his mother told him that she was proud of him. He had felt the joy of commitment doing his job in his previous life. But this was much better. Thanks. But aren't you mad? He asked, unsure of his actions now that his father was telling him about it. Genkei put up a thoughtful expression before shrugging indifferently. Yeah, but you defended Izuku, so no, there isn't a punishment for you. Junpei blinked in surprise. Really? His father nodded. Really? He stood up and regarded the kids. Helping someone is the source of our desire to help, the reason to be selfless, and the reason that we are heroes. Take it to your hearts and remember that fame is not something that all the heroes does, all right? Yes, the three kids smiled. Still, Genkei muffled his snickers. I can see that it was funny how the woman got worked out. And I can agree on what you said, Junpei, he whispered, snickering. The kids giggled in agreement. Still though, remember, don't let your emotions cloud you. It will someday bite you back, understood? He said sternly. Yes. Arata watched from where he stood and grinned. I guess he has taken my words to his thick skull and heart. Not bad, little pup, not bad. Getting all the families into the registration office. The three kids watched in awe on how big the place it was. Wow, so old school. Itsuka mumbled in awe, which a few family members who were close to her nodded numbly in agreement. Genkei watched in nostalgia. His time here had recalled some memories, and even some phantom pains in his body. Especially his head, but nevertheless, it was good to see the old place intact. There were some seniors training or sparring, and few of them stopped to see the new kids that were about to join. So as I mentioned before, Arata began. My name's Kanseki Arata, and I'm the Grandmaster of this dojo. You may address me as Grandmaster, Master, or Old Man. I don't care much about formalities. I used to be a hero in my early days as an active hero, but I decided to retire and open this dojo, which was my old office, and train those that wants to learn self-defense. But that doesn't mean that I'll hold your hands and compliment you easily, he said sternly. This will become a difficult path that most of you might surrender, cry to your parents, or vomit your guts. Listen to me well, you all, because once you had reached out the proficiency in my arts, you will become a different man or woman, and you'll shine like diamonds into the society, he declared in a motivational tone. A few children cowered at the first part of his speech, but hearing it more, it brought them some kind of determination instead of fear. Arata watched the kids change and grinned that he will be responsible of nurturing them into fine men and women. Shall we begin? Year 2281, 4 years later, age of 8. 4 years passed by, and training under Arata wasn't their worst decision in their lives. Sure, there were times that they had puked for overdoing it, and received more punches than they could have returned back. But they had overcome most difficulties than many other kids of their age had done. Junpei, Izuku, and Itsuka had trained together for the most time, and Arata was to believe that these three kids had shown more promise than any of their ages. Itsuka showed her versatile ability to fight with her quirk and without it. It put most of her opponents hesitate on how to fight her without getting hurt. Junpei mostly used his quirk to dodge quickly when his legs couldn't, showing that if Junpei continuously used his quirk like that, his opponents might not be able to touch him unless he wanted to be hit. And even if he didn't use his quirk, he was a monster in the power department. Izuku was the one that Arata was worried the most, but through the years, his worries had disappeared when Izuku began fighting with dexterity and flexibility. While he was the quirkless of the group, none of the kids had underestimated him when he began fighting seriously. His fighting and grappling skills had put them to shame, but his nature of heroism, he had helped others when they didn't ask, which earned him on their good sides. Even his analytical skill had gotten him wondering how monstrous it would be if that was sharpened to the point that his brain analyzed heroes' and villains' quirks in a tremendous power. It has gotten him that he had joined to the dark side. He would be a force to be reckoned and feared. The three kids were good friends to the point that they would have been called brothers in arms, except for Itsuka, who would be a sister. Speaking of sister, Itsuka was looked upon being the big sister of the students of her age because of her leadership and quick decision. It would have been good to nurture her more her skills, but life didn't go as planned. Oh. The three kids had joined together with Genkei, Hideko, Inko, and Itsuka's parents, Itsuki and Kendo Naoki, who had become friends with Hideko and Inko. The reason behind their reunion was because the Kendo family had to move out of Shizuoka Prefecture because of Itsuka's parents' jobs. I don't wanna. You can stay here with us. Just don't go, Izuku wailed tearfully, holding Itsuka's hands. You dummy, Itsuka snickered, also tearing up. Real men don't cry. Junpei wasn't saddened to the point of crying, but for 4 years they had grown closer than any time Junpei had lived with. He sure had people in his previous life, more to those two little ones that he protected, but this was something he was going to cherish. He wondered now how they and the people he left behind were. You should say something, Junpei-kun. Hideko pushed him softly with a small smile. It's okay, Mom, he stated solemnly before smiling when Izuku and Itsuka looked at him. This isn't a farewell. It's a see you later. Itsuka sniffed before grinning at him. That's what I said. I'll train hard and show her how I grew, Izuku declared firmly, wiping his tears with his arm. Itsuka walked toward him and gave him a hug. Then, see you later, Jukken. During the 4 years that they were together, Izuku had mentioned his nickname and Itsuka wondered about it. telling her story behind the nickname. Izuku wanted to say it too, and Junpei gave the approval. Only if she won against him in one of the spars. It would say something that women want something when they put their hearts to it. She had won one spar against Junpei after losing many times, but once she won against him, she was delighted and sang her victory. Junpei shook his head with amusement and let her use his nickname. Not like she didn't get either. Yeah, see ya, Suka, he said, returning the hug. Slightly reddened, Itsuka scratched her cheek before shaking it off and looking at Izuku. I can continue training because I ain't going to neglect mine, so we three will become heroes at UA, okay? Izuku nodded vigorously, sobbing quietly. Okay. We'll get in contact, Suka. Junpei smiled, which Itsuka blushed and nodded. With that, the Kendo family moved out, and the two continued training together. Arata was saddened of her departure, but he had given her some routines for her to train, and that she would be always welcome to his dojo, which she delightedly accepted. Weeks passed by and Junpei had announced his second quirk that his family were patiently waiting. The second quirk that he had chosen was Oni, because of his close combat capabilities. The surprising thing that he had happened when his second quirk appeared. He had gotten 2 yellow horns poked out his skull. It was a simple day like any other day when Izuku noticed something small popping out his skull. Blinking in surprise, Junpei touched slightly his newly formed horns and was surprised that his second quirk had appeared. Sure, he had first told his family about it, and both Genkei and Hideko were overjoyed of it. The next day, he had told to the Midori at Bakugo, and even Arata, because it would be strange for him to notice the 2 popping horns on his skull. Izuku's reaction was subdued because while he began surprised, he was slightly jealous of it, but quickly shook it off, as it wasn't very important for him to be resented. Arata's reaction was overwhelming in a good way, as he simply cackled about it and shrugged the news like any other day. He wondered why, but he thought that age had him think that it wasn't important at all. And as for Katsuki's, well, let's say that the first reaction he expected was being livid. But he then scoffed and said the next thing. You having a second quirk doesn't mean any shit. I will beat you either way. So yeah, that was also expected from him. If you didn't see that reaction of him, you don't him enough. But through time, he had gotten intelligent and wary of my telekinetic abilities of magic eyes, which he subdued him every time that he does something hostile to Izuku. So, anyways, there has been a slightly problem when he had to deal with his second quirk, Oni. It had nothing to do with the characteristic of the quirk itself, but the name. What should we do? Keiji grunted thoughtfully with his arms crossed. I mean, magic eyes and Oni sounds good by themselves. Fumiko pointed out in the same position as her brother. But in the quirk registration, we cannot register his quirk as both, but it should sound only one. What do you think, Junpei Tauro? The siblings said in sync, glancing at their youngest brother. Junpei sat with them in the middle of the living room between the sofas and the TV because they had asked him to. He didn't know what they were talking about until they began their conversation. It was strange that he couldn't write both quirks in his registration, as he recalled that updating it wasn't a problem. But writing two was, as there wasn't a case like his. So, as the youngest of all, he had one answer. How should I know? He enjoyed the way they face vaulted comically because of his answer. That doesn't help at all, they raged in unison. Ma, don't be so hard on him. Genkei chuckled in amusement, walking toward them and sitting on the sofa. It hasn't been ever a time that someone was born with two quirks. It might be hard, but we should be able to come up with something. Hideko giggled in agreement as she handed Fumiko a plate of fruits and sat with her husband. He's right, we should be able to come up with something for Junpei-kun. But Mom, Keiji groaned, eating a sliced apple. If we knew that it would have been easier. Yeah, our quirks were easy to name them as it was obvious. Fumiko pointed out in agreement, caressing her fluffy tail. I mean, I thought that mine was Fox at the beginning, but when it grew up a second one, we then changed it to Divine Fox. And for Keiji's power beast, we thought that it was Feral Strength before. That name sucked balls, Keiji grumbled under his breath before yelping in pain. Yipe. Language, son. Hideko warned him, tapping a back scratcher on her hand. Sorry, Mum. Anyway, Fumiko dragged on. What do we call it then? Genkei crossed his arms and hummed thoughtfully. Well, we should probably call it Devil. He stared with a raised eyebrow at his family when they gave him an incredulous look. What? You know that naming their quirks are strange. Look at Endeavor. He named his quirk Hellflame because he controls his high-degree flames. and nobody has a problem with it. Although, he didn't have problem because of his status. Hideko deadpan, with a sweat drop. Alright, we conclude that Junpei's quirk's name will be Devil until said otherwise. Agreed? Yeah. Sure, why not? Yes. So, with that, they had declared Junpei's quirk as Devil. It was mostly because of his gray horn popping on his skull, and if his hair were much darker, and maybe blacker, he would have looked more apart. Ironic of the name of quirk was that the term Devil used to be his previous nickname before he took charge of the two misses. Another day passed by, but one day took them up to surprise. Genkei and Hideko stood together, while their children sat comfortably in front of them, waiting for something. Why did you call us? Keiji asked. We have an announcement to make. Genkei stated proudly with a matching grin, while Hideko smiled beatifically. We are going to have another baby. Really? Keiji said incredulously. Really? Fumiko yipped joyfully. Really? Hideko nodded in affirmation. The doctor said that I'm pregnant for a month, and he said that I should be careful from now on. She giggled. Well, we are going to have a fourth, so, Genkei chuckled, rubbing smoothly Hideko's back. We might not know how it would continue. Oh, shush. So, with that, the Takahashi family waited for their new family member and celebrated with Genkei and Fumiko helping on the kitchen, while Keiji and Junpei talked with their mother. Another day in the Takahashi house. Year 2282, 9 months later, age of 8. 9 months passed by and Hideko's belly had grown to the size of a watermelon. While Genkei worked hard on his heroic job, Keiji prepared for his entrance exam of UA. Fumiko continued studying as well as helping her mother with the chores, and Junpei helped in any way he could assist. The Midoriyas and Bakugos were as well pleased and congratulated her for her pregnancy. Izuku was excited to have a pseudo-little brother or sister, in all but blood, and Katsuki was neutral on this matter, although, if Junpei knew exactly of what he was going to do, he would probably play with him or her, and maybe telling him or her his awesomeness. One day, Hideko groaned in pain as her water broke, which panicked all the family. Junpei immediately took all his family to the hospital and rushed Hideko for the doctor. They waited, and waited in the waiting room, while Hideko remained inside with Genkei for support. Hours of waiting. The cries of a baby brought us to attention. It's a girl, the doctor declared. Takahashi Himari, their newly family member. Welcome to the world, little sis. But as everyone was delighted for the birth, the house wouldn't be able to hold all family members as Junpei was sharing his room with Keiji, and there wasn't any more room for the baby. Izuku bawled his eyes out when he heard that Junpei was going to move out, but quickly reassurance that they were going to move out in the same prefecture. Losing one friend was enough for him. No need to lose another one when he was the closest one. And so, they moved out to a bigger house with enough rooms for everyone, 3 bathrooms, a large living room, and even a huge garden at the back of the house. Genkei looked around next to the cellar. Not bad, we'll take it. And so, they moved out of their new home with Junpei being the transported with his magic eyes' skill of teleportation. It was a good training for him to see how much weight and time he could take. While it was big, it wasn't like the house he used to live in his previous life, or in comparison of Momo or Shoto's homes. But, like he mentioned, while watching his mother cooing their giggling youngest. Welcome to your new home, Himari-chan. Eccentric inventor. The Takahashi family started to get used to the new home. It was cozy, comfortable, and they loved the garden, mostly Genkei, Keiji and Fumiko, who they laid on the grass and let their skins feel the warm breeze and sun on them. Hideko watched in amusement and Junpei mostly played with Himari on the garden when she wanted and guarded her. But a problem had surged. The problem was his quirk. Yes, you read it well, you all. His quirk was giving him a problem. Why do you ask? If you don't remember, his new quirk only gave him Goliath-like strength, even in his child body. And the first thing had happened when he used Chopstick as normal as possible. But they ended up crushing them like butter, which shocked the family except for the oblivious Himari. And they were iron ones, not wood. Many other accidents happened with him, which won't be mentioned as the replacements were many. But one that can be mentioned was that during his training in the Unbreakable Dojo, Genkei had told Arata about the surge of his new strength, which intrigued Arata fully, and asked one of the toughest senior he had to spar against him. Most kids, Izuku included, were worried about Junpei's safety, but Arata shrugged them off. Even if reluctantly, Genkei accepted this match and began the sparring. To say that Junpei's new strength shocked everyone was an understatement, as when he sparred normally, people barely flinched with his punches. Now, the toughest senior who his quirk rough skin could tank any kind of attack, which he had the best defense quirk in the dojo, was sent backward and crashing toward a wall, knocked out, was shocking to everyone. Well now, Arata mused with a hint of something in his voice and eyes. He didn't know. Let's try another test that doesn't involve anyone and see how we can work with it. Junpei followed to the T his new regimen of training, as he knew exactly how his strength that he could control between non-lethal and lethal whenever he tried, to full lethal and see how can lessen his strength. He was once asked by Arata to punch the tower of bricks and see how much he could do. This test was mostly to those that had experienced punching things, and that their hands hardened to the point that most objects wouldn't damage their hands. So, he did as he was told and punched the tower of bricks. There were 10 thick bricks as tower, and he positioned behind the tower, while a group of spectators watched the scene in wonder. While thick enough to hurt a hand of a child, Junpei's hand wasn't hurt with it, as it looked pristine, a few brick dust on it, but nothing else. As for the bricks themselves, well, they now had a hole in the center carven cleanly, while maintaining their tower form. It shocked most of the kids, while impressing a few seniors and Arata. It has been 2 months since he started training, and he had gotten better on holding back instead of almost killing his opponent. He could now only train with seniors as they had more experience than him, and Izuku wasn't worried with it. We can train together once you get better with your strength, he declared, and Junpei was okay with it. Continuously training his quirk and strength, he knew that no matter how much he took his time on training them, he felt that it wouldn't be close to reach his limit. So, he decided to ask his parents about it. Mom, Dad, is there a way to control this strength of mine? Junpei asked. I know that I won't be able to control this strength by myself alone, and I need somehow to adjust my power. Both parents glanced at each other, understanding their son's worries. While he had worked hard to adjust his strength, being a kid with a Goliath strength was very worrying for those close to him, and they had to look for a solution before accidents occur. Dear, should we ask for support equipment for Junpei? Hideko asked worriedly. Yeah, we should. But it will be difficult to find a competent support industry that is able to match Junpei's strength. Genkei grimaced. While I'm not dissing them for their quality, they wouldn't be able to match his strength, and they are working. What about your parents or your brother? Junpei blinked in surprise. That was the first time he heard about them. The only time he knew about his grandparents or any uncle or aunt, from both Genkei and Hideko, were the times that they sent them presents during special events, which were extravagant. What kind of family did he born into? No, they are busy with their work, and from what last I heard them, they were in a business arrangement with another company. As for him, he won't be able until his business trip in France ends. Hideko sighed. I don't think they'll be able to build a support equipment for him, even if they wished. Genkei groaned, massaging the bridge of his nose. Great! Who would be crazy enough to build something like? He paused as his eyes widened in realization. Unless, noticing his realization, Hideko also thought of the same person they thought about and grimaced. Oh great, are you telling me that we have to take Junpei to her? I don't mean that she didn't that bad, but… I know what you mean, Genkei groaned, slightly shivering. Even with many years, I can't still shake off the feeling of being her guinea pig. Ooh, should I be concerned about that? Junpei thought, slightly worried of who they'll take him to. Still though, I wonder who that person is if father is scared of her. The next day, Genkei took Junpei to the person they talked about yesterday. So Dad, Junpei started, unsure on how he could speak about. Who is this person you're going to take me? Genkei rubbed the back of his neck. Well, you know that your mother and I assisted Yua together, right? With an affirmative nod, he continued. Well, back when I started, I used to have the same problem with you at the beginning, and there was someone who got interested in making me my support equipment before I stopped using them. So, Junpei tilted his head, wanting to know more. Well, my son, while the person we are going to meet is strange, she is one of the best inventor that I can put my trust on. Apart from your mother's family, I guess. Genkei smiled confidently before that confidence shattered like a broken glass as it became twitchier. Despite of her oddness, Junpei mused who this person would be. Someone new that he didn't have any knowledge of. I did meet Izuku by chance as I knew that she was a martial artist. I would meet other characters that I know of, or those that I don't any recollection. What can you also tell me about her? He asked curiously. Genkei rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Well, I did meet her in the strangest way when I began Yua. She wasn't the most sociable person I had encountered, but she was good on what she did. She loved creating new things and promoting her inventions. Huh. She was eager to show her inventions with expectation. And when her inventions failed, she wasn't boomed down, but instead, she put effort on her next projects and surprised everyone in UA with her inventions. He smiled in a nostalgic way. She reminds me of someone Junpei thought of, a certain pink-haired inventor. The nostalgia ended when Genkei shivered in terror and Junpei blinked in confusion. The worst of all, while I am resilient with many things because of my quirk, she continuously asked me to become her guinea pig for her inventions. And she was famous for making her projects blow up or injuring her test subjects. Now, I don't really feel like meeting her. Junpei deadpan. Here we are. Junpei looked up to the store that looked like a house was attached over it. There was a sign that the store was named Creating for the Crazies with the C word emphasizing grandly, and the other words smaller one over another in a steampunk style. Genkei walked to the store's double door and knocked. Hey, Natsumi, we are here. All right, I heard the first knock. Knock it off. A female voice complained as steps could be heard inside, just as the sound of machinery. Once the door opened, Junpei noticed the woman at front. She was a beautiful woman standing at the door, wearing black cotton tank top with blue working pants with a strap hanging on one shoulder. Her hair was practically dark pink dreadlocks, and over her head she was wearing black working goggles. And what most noticeable in her appearance were her yellow eyes, which were various circles around her pupils. Oh, and she had big breasts too. She had the height of 5'10", 78 centimeters. The only thing that it came up in Junpei's head was, wow, she just looks like her. Genkei laughed wholeheartedly. My bad. Thanks for making time to visit, he said thankfully. I brought my son to look up some ideas. The newly woman named Natsumi leaned down to see Junpei. He noticed that her pupils shifted to him and grinned. Well, if you look at that, it's like seeing you again when we attended at UA, except for the horns. She spoke up bluntly. The name's Hatsune Natsumi. It's nice to meet you, future hero. Hatsune Natsumi. Junpei widened his eyes in realization. Same hair, same attitude, same face and body. I'm meeting with that eccentric's mother. Junpei. He quickly shook off his surprise as Genkei looked at him oddly and bowed politely. It's nice to meet you, Hatsune-san. I'm Takahashi Junpei. And he really had a tone like that when we first met. Natsumi blurted out with a chuckle. Man, those were the times. If turning me into a test subject of your many inventions is to call it times, Genkei grumbled murderously. Oblivious or ignoring his grumbles, Natsumi continued. Still though, it is like seeing you like before. Take off his horns, lighten the blue of his hair, have instead of purple to blue eyes, and done. An exact replica of you. Well, he is my son, but there are also his mother's features. Genkei chuckled. Oh, how's Hideko? She is fine after the pregnancy, he told her. Was she pregnant? I didn't know about it, she said, slightly surprised. You were kind of busy at the time, and you tend to ignore your messages of your friends, he pointed out flatly. Natsumi blinked numbly for a moment before putting a tee-hee expression. Whoops, my bad. I had another idea for a project, and I couldn't stop until I finished them. She chuckled humorously. Rolling his eyes, Genkei continued. Anyways, about my son. Oh, yes, your son. All right, let's get inside and see what I can do. She moved aside for them to pass. Shall we? Entering the strange store, Junpei noticed the interior of the place. While the place didn't look so big, the space was spacious enough to play basketball, had it not be for the mass scattered inventions, both on the walls and ground. There were many piles of machinery and gadgets on the ground amassed that started to form a pyramid. Geez, at least work on cleaning this place, Natsumi. Genkei grimaced at the sight of garbage. Don't worry, I'll have it cleaned out one day. Natsumi shrugged carelessly. I don't think she'll ever work out on cleaning. Both father and son deadpanned in sync. They walked around more until they found a large desk with a lamp hanging over it and many blueprints scattered on it. There was also a nameplate with Natsumi's name in a steampunk version with gears and so. So, little hero, what is it that Aunt Natsumi can help you? She asked as she spun on her steampunk Y-chair and grinned in challenge. Since when were you considered his aunt? Genkei asked with a raised eyebrow in amusement. Since when you presented your son to me, she declared dramatically with a hand on her chest. I know I'm not the best person to be considered like that, but I wish to have a nephew of my own. All right, enough of this dramatization. Genkei rolled his eyes. So, what do you need for him to do? Natsumi grinned, accepting the challenge, before walking toward the back door. You see, while I can do anything I want, I need a demonstration of his quirk before knowing what equipment to build. To do so, I need to. She was interrupted when a pile of gadgets fell down and Genkei stared at her unamused of her fallen piles. You need to work on that. Natsumi sighed tiredly before staring at the fallen piles. Mei, I know you're there. Junpei didn't seem to understand how the pile flinched, but his thoughts were cut when the pile scattered and a petite girl emerged from it. The girl who rose up had a reasonably short girl. She has salmon pink hair, which was shoulder length and was styled into thick dreadlocks, thicker than her mother's. Her eyes were wide and sloped upwards with long upper eyelashes and yellow irises, which made it look like scope lenses. She was wearing a plain black tank top with workshop coveralls tied casually around her waist with red and gold goggles. And her height was barely 4'10", 47 centimeters. Junpei was 5'01", 52 centimeters, for which he could see well her scoped eyes. He noticed that her goggles weren't those that he remembered. Maybe those were her first goggles before upgrading them. He mused, thinking on how steampunk they were. But Mom, her whines brought his attention as Mei walked up to her mother. You promised me that I would help you if I finished my homework. You finished even the thing I asked for? She inquired, raising an eyebrow. Of course, she beamed joyfully. The woman nodded in acceptance before smiling at her daughter. That's great of you, Mei. You're going to be awesome once you grow up. Mei giggled excitedly before noticing Junpei blankly. Who's he? She asked her mother. Natsumi was going to introduce him before she paused, and it seemed that something had struck her mind. With a sly grin, which Genkei recognized and dreaded for her idea, she pushed her daughter forward to him. Why don't introduce yourself, Mei? She said as Mei now stood in front of him, and she blinked in surprise. Junpei noted how Mei was checking on him like a rare animal before beaming with a smile. Hi, I'm Hatsune Mei. It is nice meeting you, future hero. He blinked at her introduction, but nevertheless, he gave her a smile. Takahashi Junpei, same. I'll be in your care, Hatsune-san. She seemed to pause momentarily before getting into his personal space. That will not do. Just call me Mei. I know that you and I will be capable of changing the world by showing my babies. And her way of naming her inventions was brought out. Good for her. He thought, slightly disturbed on how a kid of 8 years old brought the word baby from her mouth without sounding normal. Why, yeah. But I'm going to take on heroics like everyone on my family. Junpei said, which were the worst thing, as Mei immediately put her face much closer to him, and with a mad and challenging grin, accepted the fact. That is even better, as I need someone who can test my babies, she stated excitedly, her eyes literally sparkling, which started to scare Junpei. This was the work of destiny meeting you and me. We'll make many babies which you'll test them for me, and I'll be able to upgrade them. There was a pregnant pause, except for the giggling Natsumi and the excited Mei. The silence was broke out when Junpei spoke out. Dad? Yes, son. Is it normal to be scared of women, but more? Yes, Junpei, yes, it is. Oh good. Then I'm not the only one. You have my sympathies. I'll take it. Oh, come on, Genkei, don't be a drama queen, Natsumi chided, putting an arm over his shoulder. Those were good times. You and me testing my own babies and upgrading to the point that I could promote them. Yeah, good times, Genkei grumbled sarcastically. So with the banter done, they moved to another room, which in the center, there was a harmless dummy. Except that it had experienced many hardships as dummy. Hey, if it isn't training dummy I used back when you had me test some gadgets. Genkei whistled. I thought it was destroyed the last time I used. And it was 25 years ago. Natsumi shrugged. It is sturdy enough that it lasted this long, and the many times I had to upgrade it to the point that it would take all might strength to destroy it. This training dummy can hold his strength. Junpei stared at the training dummy in appreciation. I hope that it can hold mine. Why don't you try it, Junpei? Genkei offered, noticing the excitement of his son. He nodded in agreement as he walked toward the training dummy. All right. As he walked toward it, Natsumi had to ask. So, what is your son's quirk, by the way? It was a surprise at first about it, but we named it Devil. Genkei said, which earned a flat look of Natsumi. Really? I remember the first time you said your hero name before changing it. Natsumi tapped her chin, missing the blushing Genkei. What was it? Ah, yes, it was. Enough about me. My son's about to start. Genkei cut in, blushing while covering her mouth with his hand. Junpei, ignoring what they chatted, stood in front of the training dummy in expectation. While he wanted to spar more with his seniors, there was a limit on how long they could continue, and training dummies weren't resilient enough for his strength. Somehow, I feel like that bald character of that anime. The misses were suddenly interested in Junpei thought before shaking off those memories. You can do it, Takahashi. Mei cheered, which Natsumi grinned at her daughter and Genkei's side. Junpei positioned himself ready to strike the dummy. He reeled back his fist and threw his punch toward it. The consequence of his actions brought widened eyes of his spectators, which they barely managed to cover their eyes as a shockwave with wind blew up completely the training dummy. Once recovered from the shock, Natsumi whistled at the state of the dummy. The pole that was attached on the ground remained where it was, except that it lost the upper torso of the dummy. Awa, man, I thought it could last long. Junpei clicked his tongue in displeasure. Ha ha ha, don't worry, Junpei. They can also make more and resilient, am I right? Genkei said, glancing at Natsumi. Yeah, I could. She grinned. And it will be the best challenge that I'll overcome with it. The 3 one-in-mind adults glanced at the silent Mei as she hadn't spoken at all. The reaction was unexpected for Junpei, but for Natsumi and Genkei, they were familiar on how her expression was. Her grin stretched ear to ear, and her eyes sparkled at the idea that someone could destroy the training dummy that her mother was proud of. Mom? Yes, dear. Can I have a suggestion? Natsumi quirked an eyebrow. Let's hear it first. The mother leaned down to her daughter's height, and Mei whispered something on her ear. After finishing her whispering, Natsumi looked blankly for a moment before grinning, which brought shivers to Genkei. Well, that is a great idea, she stated. Nothing less of my daughter. That is for sure, Genkei, she called out the hero. Why don't you lend me your son? A pause. And then, what? Genkei shouted incredulously. Why? I brought him for his support equipment, and you are asking me to lend him to you. Do I look like a toy to you? Junpei deadpanned with a sweat drop. Because, Natsumi bellowed out dramatically. I understand what you are thinking. But I will pay him the part-time job if he wants to help around. With his strength, we would be able to accelerate some commission that we were asked to. The more the merrier. Junpei noticed Genkei's eye twitching on how to respond to that before sighing wearily and pinching the bridge of his nose. And to think that this was a bad idea, he grumbled under his breath. He sighed again to calm himself down before staring at his old friend. I have to speak with my wife about this before we decide anything. But I won't promise you anything, you understand. All right? Natsumi grinned victoriously. As for the gadgets. Oh yeah, Mei, bring me my notepads, she said, raising a hand which Mei immediately handed her one and begun writing. All right, we will have to build some kind of suppressor that won't kill anybody, but enough to make his opponent unconscious. Are you following? With an affirmative nod, she continued. So, we might need to build a prototype for both arms and legs, and test them as soon as possible. With a final scribble, Natsumi nodded with a smirk. All right, I might have something to work with. Mei, check our inventory if we still have some of these materials to start. Roger that, Mom, Mei saluted, receiving the notepads before looking at Junpei with a smile. It was nice meeting you. With that, she began her work. Why yeah, Junpei mumbled, unsure of how their first time meeting went. His first meeting with Izuku was surprising for him, and he was glad to meet her. She was looked up as the leader of her class, and she was strong, and also a good sparring opponent. But meeting Mei, because of his lack of control, it seemed that the world has planned something for him, and now if his parents permitted him to work here, he would see her daily. Okay, Natsumi, what's the big deal that you had to ask about my son working here? Genkei huffed, crossing his arms. Natsumi glanced between Genkei and Junpei, who had still watched Mei do her things, before whispering on his ear. Genkei listened attentively for her excuse before frowning in contemplation and nostalgia before sighing in defeat. Fine, that is something I can relate between you two. Genkei rubbed his face. But still, the final word is between me and Heiko, so don't get your hopes up, all right? That is all I ask. Natsumi nodded in affirmation before looking at Junpei. So, what do you think of my daughter, future hero? Junpei looked at the mother present before looking back at the daughter. Well, she is quite a character you don't see every day, he admitted truthfully. Natsumi laughed at his confession in acknowledgement. Yes, she is my daughter, and got most of my traits than her father, she said. All right, little hero, We'll be busy for a time, so I think that it would be a week or so to get a prototype. We'll call you when it is ready." With that promise, Genkei and Junpei left the warehouse, leaving the duo engineers to work. Year 2281, age of 8, Takahashi household afternoon. They had returned to their home, and both father and son went to do what they were supposed to do. Junpei played with Himari on his laps, giving her some weird faces and earning some adorable giggles, while Genkei sat with Hideko on the dining room with cups of tea. "So, how did your meeting with Natsumi-chan go?" Hideko asked. "Well, truthfully, she hadn't changed much through years, and it's still the same when we first met her," Genkei answered with a chuckle. "In fact, she has a daughter that looks and acts like her." "Oh my, it seems that Junpei-kun will live like you had," she chimed with a chuckle. "Ugh, don't remind me of that," he groaned, sipping his tea. "I was the unluckiest one on being asked to test her gadgets. Too much explosions. Too much pain. That was too much." "What is I hear about explosions?" Fumiko asked in worry, walking out of her room. "And did I hear something about a girl?" Keiji added. "The same as his sister," with a grin. "Oh, our little brother is meeting another one, huh? Don't you worry, that your brother will teach you the way of wooing a girl. I simply went to look for a support equipment, and the one who would work on it was coincidentally a girl," Junpei said flatly. "Oh, don't be so shy on your Aniki," he stated, getting closer with a sly grin. "If you're going to pester me because of it, I'll use my eyes," Junpei warned him, narrowing his eyes. "I'm not afraid to use it." Keiji was about to retort before Fumiko slapped a tail on his back, earning a glare. "Hey, what the hell, Fumiko? Knock it off, Keiji. Just because he met another girl doesn't mean that he was going to woo her," she huffed angrily. "He is 8, for God's sake. I won't let you taint his innocence with your stupidity and hormonal problem. I'm older by a large margin than them, but they don't have to know." Junpei deadpanned, holding Himari between his legs. "Oh please, Junpei knows what he does," Keiji declared. "I remember that he brought a girl to our previous house with Izuku. The girl named Itsuka? Whatever. The thing is, he is working on his range of women. Don't put on the same category as you damn hormonal idiot," Fumiko scowled angrily. "Or I'll make your dreams a nightmare if you keep doing it." "Try me. I'll have my revenge if you do that," he retorted, butting heads with Fumiko. "And I'll have you know that in the future, he'll be popular with girls just I am." "Why you? Children, please," Hideko warned them with a morbid smile, which made them flinch in terror. "We're sorry," they apologized, prostrating to her. "What dumbasses of siblings." Junpei sighed as he laid Himari on the floor with her toys before walking toward his room. But mentioning about Itsuka, it had made him think about her. It has been 11 months since she moved out and had their tearful farewells with Izuku. They did chat before, but he had been busy with the moving, and it had been 2 months since then. Maybe he should contact her and see how she is. Taking out his phone, he dialed her number that Genkei passed him through Itsuki. "Hey, Suka, it's been a while." "Yeah, it has been, Jokun. How you've been?" she asked, happy for calling her. Good. Just getting used to the new house and having a young sister," he told her. Itsuka didn't know about Himari at all. "Really? Aunt Hideko was pregnant? Tell her my congratulations," she said joyfully. "Sure, I might also send you some pictures of my little sis. Her name's Himari, if you're wondering." He chuckled, sitting on his bed. "So, moving out to another house?" Itsuka drawled out. "Did Zuku cry when you were about to leave?" she asked in a teasing tone. Half groaning in distress, he slumped down with a hand on his face. "Yeah, you wouldn't believe how much he cried when I told him. He was crying more when you left." "Can't blame him," she responded, hinting that she was shrugging. "From what I understood, you were his very first friend that didn't leave him, so it is an understatement that he would cry." "Yeah, I guess," he admitted, quite happy about his friendship with Izuku. If only he could say that about Katsuki. "Anyways, how's treating you in your new home and prefecture?" There weren't many changes about it, but I miss you both. Sparring, I tell you how the new dojo I moved, my opponents can't even throw a punch or underestimate me completely. It is a complete disrespect," she complained. "I remember how a senior underestimated you when you first sparred with him." He chuckled. "You destroyed him completely, and ever since then, there wasn't any senior that held back against you." "Yeah, those were the times," she said wistfully. "How's Zuku, by the way?" Junpei shrugged. Same old, same old. He keeps writing down on his notebooks and keeps gushing on All Might's merchandise. Oh, and he also focuses on his training, since it is his dream to go to UA. Izuku giggled. Ha ha ha, that sounds like him. How about you? How are you holding up in the dojo? He sighed half mockingly. Well, some of the seniors or the same age as us are mad, because they can't hit me at all. Well, you are fast that dodging seem easy for you, and you hit back hard. She pointed out. Haters gonna hate. If they can't hit me, they should work hard to do so. He shrugged with a shit-eating grin before sobering when he remembered something. Oh, almost forgot. Back at the Unbreakable Dojo, Grandmaster Arata invited various martial artists, heroes included who were his alumni, and trained us. Oh man, I wished I stayed, Izuku moaned in defeat. Training with heroes would have been a boost for my training. When we meet up, I want to spar against you, she demanded. Junpei laughed. All right, it's a deal. It would have been fun if you stayed. There was a pause which Junpei frowned at it. Did I say something wrong? He wondered confusedly. Before he could ask, Izuku continued. Anyways, how's Arata-sensei? I know that he is busy with his work, but otherwise, he was a great master. Oh, beating idiot kids for their morals, telling the parents off when they demand to have their kids taught, the spoiled ones, and bellowing out his laughter like he found a challenge on anybody. And that anybody was unfortunately me. He told her flatly. Ha ha ha, same master. Izuku chuckled. All right, I think I had taken enough time of yours. Take care, Jukan. Before I forget, he began as he felt she needed to hear it. I know we will meet 4 years before Yua, but Izuku, and I miss you dearly, Itsuka. Don't forget about it. There was a hitching gasp, and the pause which Junpei waited for her response. After a few seconds, Junpei could hear the happiness of his dear friend. Why, yeah, thanks, Jukan. I'll wait for you and Izuku and Yua, she declared. Yes, ma'am. He chuckled. Good night, Itsuka. Good night. Turning off his phone, he laid down on his bed and stared at the ceiling. He had lived through 8 years and a half since he was reborn, and he was living well his new life. There will be challenges, which is for sure, but he knew that he had people he could depend on this moment. The next day, he was told by his parents what they talked about working with the Hatsune, but it seemed that he wouldn't be able to work there, but assist during visits were fine. He would be allowed after 12, but only a few hours. 2 weeks passed since he met the duo mother-daughter Hatsune. They had taken a week more to work on his equipment, and their patients had granted a call from them, calling that the prototype was ready. Genkei, little hero, welcome to our crazy factory. Natsumi greeted them warmly as they walked inside. Come in, and let me show you the magic. Once they were inside, they noticed that the piles of gadgets had piled up more than before. You've been working on more commissions, Natsumi, because I think they had piled up more than the last time we got here. Genkei sighed. What can I say? Natsumi shrugged cockily with a grin. If nobody is capable of finishing their work on time, or are incapable of building it, they all send it to me. I'm proud of myself, if I say it myself. Sure, I believe you. Genkei rolled his eyes playfully. May, they came for the support equipment. You finally came, May appeared, dirty as always with grease on her face and clothes. Junpei noticed she was holding something between her arms. Welcome to our crazy factory. He blinked at the coincidence between the mother and daughter on how they greeted them. Deja vu? What was that? He quickly shook off his head. Nothing. It is good to see you again, May. Good, because I want to show you your new equipment. May grabbed on his sleeves and dragged him off. Follow me. Hey, I can walk. Doesn't this remind you on something? Natsumi chuckled to the nostalgic sight. I said before that Junpei looked more like me, but Genkei sighed. Well, it seems familiar. Yeah. She chortled in agreement. I wonder if he is going to act like you once he gets in Yua. Ugh, don't you start again, Natsumi. I had enough of reminiscing that time in Yua. He groaned with a shudder. To think how stupid I was. Aggressive, polite, stupid, and dense. Still, I am thankful that you can at least send him here talk with May. She said gratefully. I know her desire to build her babies and getting in the support department in Yua, but she really needs a friend of her age, and because of her, let's say, eccentric nature, she can hardly meet up with new people. Genkei nodded in agreement. Yeah, I remember a time that I first met a dark pink-haired girl working on something, and she hardly listened to others. Sometimes I wonder, What would have happened if Junpei hadn't existed and Mei wouldn't have met him? Natsumi cringed at the thought, hissing between her teeth. Yeah, well, like the past me. And I am thankful that you can let your son visit her, you know. Like I said, Mei needed a friend that it isn't me or her babies. Don't worry. Knowing my son, he'll keep a good eye on her before anything happens, he assured her. Just on cue, an explosion surged where the kids were. Both parents weren't in the case panicked, as they knew that the store had a self-defense weapons, and they were both familiar with the explosions. Unless your kid kills mine, he added in a deadpan. Ha ha ha. Natsumi laughed and scratched her cheek awkwardly and embarrassedly. Yeah, sorry about that. Woo, that was awesome. Mei cheered excitedly, coming out of the smoke, all darken. You, cough, say that. Junpei followed behind, also darken of smoke, coughing. What did that supposed to do? He had the worst moment to be curious on one of the many artifacts that Mei's family had been working on. It was a spherical object that could hold any kind of energy inside before being released like a grenade. Mei had explained eagerly about it while pointing at the freaking red button on the side, which while explaining, she pressed the button, releasing the energy inside and exploding into their faces. Fortunately, the energy inside was outdated, which lost most of the punch of it, so they were mildly hurt and their ears ringing. Like I said, hold energy and release it. It isn't that hard to understand. She shrugged indifferently. Right? He coughed the last dirty air he choked on and cleaned his throat. Anyways, about my equipment. Right, she exclaimed hurriedly as she laid down what she held before on the table. This is the baby that I and my mother worked on. The culmination of 2 weeks of work and time we worked on since you gave us the commission. Junpei looked at the gadget on the table with interest. Both equipment was like wristbands and ankle warmers, but in a steampunk design and metallic instead of cloth. He wasn't expecting much as they were their first prototype, so with time, he should be able to tell them about upgrading them to a much bigger version of them. Both had black and purple as main colors and had a small panel on the right wristband. It looks cool, he pointed out blankly before earning a face-to-face closeness of Mei. Cool doesn't mean the half of what this baby can do. She leaned back with a proud grin. This baby is able to alter how much strength it can hold, so you shouldn't be concerned about it. That's amazing, Mei. He complimented her as he knew how much effort she puts on her babies. Aw, shucks, you're making me blush. She chuckled embarrassedly. A part which he hadn't seen her act like this as she was. Let's be gentle and say she is a hard-working girl. So, how does it work? Junpei eyed at the metallic wristbands. From what I can see, there isn't a button or anything that helps me with adjusting. Oh, that's easy. First off, put them on, she ordered. Feigning worry, he eyed warily at the gadgets. Are you sure? Aren't they going to explode if that happens? She puffed her cheeks, offended. Of course not, she mumbled embarrassedly while not looking at him. Sometimes. I'm just pulling your leg, Mei. Junpei chuckled. Failure is the mother of success, so I won't be mad at you. Really? She asked eagerly, getting into his personal space again. I knew I liked something about you. Natsumi snorted at the sight. I think there is something more than that, she whispered to Genkei, who rolled his eyes with a groan. As for how it works, Mei continued, ignorant of what their parents were whispering about. We had yet programmed something, so we gave you a panel that you could adjust on your own. She began tipping the panel and numbers began forming in it. As she continued touching the gadget, Junpei was watching attentively on how she worked on. While eccentric, she was one of the best engineer inventors in UA that anybody could ask for, even matching the girl in Island. Done, Mei stated as Junpei noticed that his right wristband showed 100%. And don't worry about the others. This wristband is connected with the others through hardware and software, and if you adjust your strength in this one, the others will adjust accordingly. Nice. Junpei grinned, eyeing in appreciation at the gadgets. Now I should be able to spar with Izuku with these on. First, let's test them before taking them. Mei urged Junpei to the previous room that Junpei first tested his strength on the training dummy. Natsumi and Genkei followed behind and noticed the dummy. You upgraded it? Genkei asked, noticing the new armor the dummy wore. Yup. I got the idea of adding armor, as there are some training grounds that needed more resilient training dummies, Natsumi stated proudly. This gadget is one of the many successful equipment that I created, and many others buy it from me. And all is thanks to you, Genkei. Genkei looked away embarrassedly, scratching his cheek. I didn't do anything. I just wanted something to punch after losing my first sports event. Ha ha ha. You say that, and I know you better. Natsumi chortled amusedly. Come on. Mei pouted at their parents for their interruption. Let's see if it works perfectly. All right, I'm going. Natsumi glanced at Junpei with a hand offering to the dummy. You can start, little hero. Junpei nodded and adjusted his strength in 95%. Let's start smaller. He glanced at the now armored dummy and prepared himself with his fist. Breathing in and out in a complete serene state, he closed his eyes and slightly crouched down into a punching stance. The Hatsumes and Genkei watched in anticipation on how the dummy would resist despite the first destruction. The silence was broken out when Junpei opened his eyes fiercely and thrust his fist forward in an efficient way in the solar plexus of the dummy. The dummy reeled back onto impact, but it brought the result they wanted to get. The dummy was intact, and nothing out ordinary appeared on the dummy. Natsumi whistled. Well, it seems that the gadget works, she declared. Woohoo, my baby works, Mei cheered, jumping victoriously. How do you feel, Junpei? Genkei asked. Junpei glanced at his fist. While not badly hurt, he felt the familiar throbbing sensation of pain and grinned. Great. I haven't felt like this before my overpowering strength appeared. That's good to hear, Genkei nodded in acceptance. Junpei was glad that his strength was now controlled through a machine, but he couldn't be picky on that until he was able to control it on his own. Thank you, Mei, he said with a grin. It will be useful in my trainings. No problem, she answered in acceptance, slightly blushing. I'll continue making those baby better once they broke down or needs an upgrade. Junpei nodded in acceptance. Although she is a weird girl, her brain and dedication on building support equipment was extraordinary. Great. I'll be able to help you once I am able to work here. But for now, I'll be helping you or giving some ideas for your inventions, he declared, which brought Mei a big smile. I can't wait for that day, Junpei, she chided joyfully. In that moment, it started a weird but fruitful friendship between the future inventor-engineer and the reincarnated hero. Once he brought out his support equipment to the dojo. A few, including Izuku and Arata, asked about them, and Junpei had explained that he was brought to a support department on commissioning something to be able to adjust his strength. While Arata disapproved the usage of them, he knew that he had yet to reach his potential to control his strength, so he allowed him to use until he is able to control his strength without them. Izuku wondered about them, and Junpei told him that the person behind his support equipment was an old acquaintance of his parents. But above all, Izuku was glad that he was now able to spar with Izuku and train together to become heroes. He was now happy that his strength suppressor name, not yet named Mark I, was now in his possession, until he was able to control his strength willingly. What would happen after that? Only future will tell us. Year 2287, 6 years later, 14 years old canon timeline. Well, even after 6 years, he had still been able to control his strength on his own. While his strength gradually grew up with his training, including his support equipment, he also got interested in machinery, as at the age of 11. He was given permission to work with the Hatsume at their store part-time before going to the dojo and train. Izuku had wondered where he left after school, and Junpei explained to him that he was going to his part-time job despite the age, but it worked out well, and that he would see him during training. There were times that the store didn't have much to do, so Natsumi told him that he could take the day off. But those days were rarely, as work was sometimes overwhelmed with various commissions. But those are stories that had yet to be told. Now, Junpei was now 14 years old, just like Izuku and Katsuki, and he was at the start of their stories before Yua. His relationship with the people he had met was varied. With Izuku, he remained being his best friend apart from Katsuki, training and hanging out together for the most time of his life. With Itsuka, he and she kept contacting through calls and messages to talk about how they were. With Katsuki, ever since Katsuki had declared him his rival, there wasn't a time that Katsuki kept demanded for a match, which Junpei simply used his Magic Eyes quirk to stop rampaging once he couldn't accept defeat. Although their relationship between Junpei, Izuku and Katsuki had something to do that they were childhood friends and their families gathered up together to lunch or travels. As for Mei, well, they were colleagues, and in some kind of relationship of partners during her weird and crazy creations they made. Fortunately for him, she hadn't met yet with Izuku or Katsuki, but he had told her about them. And while it was amusing that she gave them nicknames such as Muscles and Bomberhead respectively, she wasn't interested unless either they met face to face or becoming her new guinea pigs. Oh, and his nickname was Horny or Bull because of his horns. While he didn't have problem with the latter, The other one would misunderstand many people and looked at him oddly. He had tried to correct her or prohibit her of saying that word, only for her to ignore it and continue with her day like nothing happened. Sighing in defeat, he had no other choice to let her do as her pleased. She was stubborn. He'll give her that. But obviously, it didn't end just like that. Sometimes, Natsumi invites him to some late lunch. He understood that they were the same on not eating during their working times on their babies, so he sometimes brings some sandwich for them when they forget to eat all day, and he was surprised that Natsumi knew how to cook. He thought that, like her daughter, she could barely cook and order takeouts. Of course, he didn't voice that. Why, you ask? Well, you have to understand one thing that can be described to the Hatsume family. The insanity of the mother-daughter duo. Working on their store, he had become some kind of guinea pigs of Mei's, testing many of her babies, which resulted in various errors and injuries, which he got used to. It's a lie. But it was more manageable to hold his resistance. Nevertheless, he had gotten so used to her insanity that he felt numb of it, while others watched them oddly. His family somehow gotten used to Mei's madness, although Junpei was wary to have Himari close to her. The same thoughts were shared with the other family members. Despite all her oddness and weird attitude, Junpei's family welcomed Mei, which brought her a smile which was different from the usual grins or smiles she wore. In one of their works, Mei had told him something. Her dream. You know, Bull, what is my dream? She asked, her eyes on her work with a wrench on her hand. What is it, Mei-chan? He asked, lifting up his goggles on his forehead. It was the first time he had heard about it, as apart from supplying her babies to the heroes, and so he knew that it was mostly about her desire to be able to build her creations and hand it to the heroes. She continued tightening the screw with her wrench before leaving it aside and looking at him. My dream is to help not only heroes but others, such as normal people, quirk or no quirk, in their daily lives and making it easier, she declared grandly. He gave her an accepting smile and nodded. That is great about your dream, Mei. I know for sure that you will be able to make your dream real. He replied truthfully. In truth, with the 6 years of friendship with her, he had seen an insight which the manga didn't talk about. Mei was a shy girl. She only talks passionately when it is about her babies and brainstorming ideas, but apart from that, she didn't know much about what to talk about if it is something else. He always thought of her that her way of speaking and the way she acted was much eccentric and reckless, in a way that she wouldn't listen nobody if it isn't something she is interested in. She might look odd at the eyes of society and her group, but under her selfishness of inventing her baby, she was a determined and stubborn character like Izuku. Thanks, she said brightly. Noticing the time, it was almost time for him to leave and get to the dojo. Well, it seems that I have to leave now. He saw the mildly dejected look, but brightened up when he showed her a Tupperware with a specific item inside. Oh, don't be sad, Mei-chan. It doesn't suit you. I brought a handmade chocolate cake for you. Oh, gimme, she urged to hand her over her delicious snack. Once handed, she opened the cap and ate a mouthful of chocolate inside, melting her inside blissfully. Ooh, it's delicious, Tilda. Haha, I can see that, Junpei said with a chuckle, wiping his hands with a towel. Still though, I have to get back to training if I want to be ready for the entrance exam, you know. But don't worry, I'll ask my master if I can get a week off or something and help you. Really? She jumped over and gave him a grateful hug. Thank you. My babies will be grandiose with you helping me, she cackled eagerly. He patted her head with a smile, and with that, he exited the store toward his home, missing the slight blush it formed on Mei's face. Mei was glad that her mom was friend with Junpei's father, although at first, she was interested in him becoming her guinea pig to wear her babies. But by the time he was allowed to work with them, she had seen that the brainstorm ideas he shared with her was amazing, and even capable to making better her babies, which it was a bonus for her. Ara, what's with that blush, Mei? Mei was startled because of the voice, and turned around to see her mother leaning on the wall with a grin that dreaded her completely. Mom, I thought you would be late and told me that I was capable on getting by myself, she said, flustered. Natsumi shrugged, still wearing that shit-eating grin, and walked toward her daughter. Ma, the exhibition I was supposed to get at got attacked by villains, and a hero happened to stop them. So, the event was passed to another date, and I came earlier than I supposed to. She looked at her daughter mischievously. But enough of that. What was with that look that you gave at the door when Junpei left? Mom, stop teasing me, Mei moaned. Natsumi laughed at her reaction. Ha ha ha. I'm pulling a leg of yours, Mei. I know that look when you looked at Junpei. She sobered up with a solemn look. Just as I was in love with his father. Huh? Mei was surprised at that. What do you mean about that? Natsumi pursed her lips in a thoughtful manner before shrugged and walking away. Nothing important. I'll go take a nap or something. Wait. What do you mean about that, Mom? Oh. Junpei suddenly had the urge to scratch his head. Like he missed something important. Something that would understand about something. He shrugged it off and continued getting toward his home and get prepared to the dojo. Now that he thought about it, Mei hadn't met Izuku as Itsuka did. If he was honest, she can be an oddball or weird to him. But he can say that she is indeed a good friend that he can talk to, and he felt that Mei needed more friends than him. Just like Izuku. Maybe it would be a great idea of have them meet each other. Although, with Izuku who is still shy talking with girls, except for Fumiko, Himari, and Mei who talks uncontrollably, but cannot talk anything else, except about her babies or anything related to that. They weren't going to make any progress. And he expected to watch the funny scene of the first meeting between them in the future. Why does he feel like he didn't want that? Whatever. There is still time to think about it, so he shouldn't be bothered about it yet. But it has also been quite a normal day, except that Izuku had grown more than he had first encountered. He was from 5'5'1", 66 centimeters to 5'7'1", 70 centimeters, barely closer than Katsuki, which his height is 5'8'1", 72 centimeters. He had grown more muscles than Junpei could have thought. His body started to make shape during his first years of training. He was noticeably leaner than other boys in his years. Even girls would take long looks on him during PE. Also his appetite became bigger, thus the years of training that his mother, Inko, prepared grand quantity of food. Even sometimes Junpei and Izuku would take place in eating competitions or something like that. But among the three childhood friends, Junpei was the tallest and buffest. He had grown from 5'01", 52 centimeters to 5'8'1", 75 centimeters just because of his father's genes, which his father, Jinkei, is 6'6'1", 98 centimeters. His mother, Yui, is 5'9'1", 75 centimeters. His brother, Keiji, is 6'01", 83 centimeters. His sister, Fumiko, is 5'8'1", 74 centimeters, and his little sister, Himari, is 39.51, cm, being the youngest of the family by 6 years old. His muscle mass had grown so much that his old clothes could barely hold him, yet he maintained a balanced dietary, although sometimes his hunger gets the best of him. Sometimes people would mistake him with Kenshiro of Hokuto, no Ken Fist of the North Star, because of his muscles. So he decided to let his hair grow so much that his bangs covered a third of his face, leaving his right eye open and the back of his head. The hair reached to his shoulder, so sometimes he had to tie into a pigtail to not bother him during his training. It's going to be their last year as seniors in junior high, so he will begin training his newfound quirk. Year 2287, Alder Tatooine Station, 14 years old. Another day in Japan with the every normal life of the people, doing their own things such as working, hanging out with friends, going for a walk. Bramp. Get out of my way. And yes, also a villain escaping from the authorities with a purse on hand. The normalcy of the world of quirks. Who's fighting? Izuku, managing to move toward the scene, asked eagerly with his notes on hand. The hero who was battling the villain was Nishia Shinji aka Kamui Woods. He had pinned down the villain, but the villain had some kind of quirk that turned him into a giant. Izuku began rambling on, while writing down on his notes with precision, and an old man who stood next to him liked the energy of his. Kamui Woods was winning the fight, and had him on the corner. This is your end, villain. Lacquer Prizo. Canyon. Everyone watched in surprise as a gigantic woman in purple and cream skin tight drop-kicked the shit out of the villain, just as many men prepared their cameras and took pictures of the new heroine. My name is Mount Lady. The gigantic woman, also known as Taikama Yu, greeted to her fans. It's a pleasure to meet you and leave the rest to me. The photographers cheered at the heroine. While Izuku continued rambling on his notes, Junpei's eye twitched. The reason behind was that he had gotten known of the new heroine, as she is Katsuki's cousin, and they had met when they were kids. And, see what I did here? I made them cousins after finding out in Tumblr by Blamed Orange with this called shitty cousins. It's quite good if I am honest. But Junpei was the only one between the two of them that recalled her, while Izuku had forgotten because of his training schedule. He then looked at his greenette childhood friend who still had his eyes on the heroine while his hand moved rapidly on the page. Gigantification, As a quirk, it's fairly likely to attract attention and popularity. But isn't it also somewhat limiting since it'd be easier to inadvertently damage the city while on the job? Of course, that'd be moot if one could control one's size. He continued rambling on to the point of muttering. He's such a hero otaku. Alright, Junpei thought good naturally. You taking notes? Aiming to be a hero, huh? Nice. Good luck, kid. The old man next to him cheered for him. Why yes, sir. I'll do my best, Izuku replied. Twack. Oh. Hey, Aiken. While I know that your notes are important, we're going to be late. Junpei told him. His hands were covered in a metallic glove, except for his fingers and underneath his pants and foot. He wore a thin layer of greaves that also matched the same tone of his gear. At the moment, since there isn't a fight or commotion that he could handle, he had them on full suppressed or 100%. Lowering the repressor's percentage means that he will use more strength. So at the moment, he had the strength of a quirkless grown man. Sorry, I wanted to watch. Izuku apologized. Let's go. Aldera Junior High School. Come on, class. You're junior high school seniors. It's time you started thinking seriously about your futures. The homeroom teacher of Class 3 said, holding a bunch of papers in his hand. I'll be handling out printouts on your desired life course. He shouted with a serious tone before it changed into a dreamy smile, tossing away the printouts. You all want to be heroes, don't you? In response of this, all the students present showed off their quirks cheerfully, excited at the prospect of becoming a popular flashy hero. Except 3 students. Yes, your quirks are all wonderful, but it's against the rules to use them during school. Junpei and Izuku barely raised their hands to become noticeable. Their calm demeanor was hardly flashy inside the class. Then the loud ones started yelling. Sensei, don't lump me in with everybody else. You can't compare me to these losers' weak-ass quirks. Mine's a whole other ballgame. He mocked the others, sitting and putting his feet onto the desk, giving shit about others, and thinking he is the king of the class. You've got a big mouth, Katsuki. The other students booed him, as he was mocking them truthfully. Others kept quiet, knowing him being the big man of the class, the arrogant bully and violent. Quiet, you got him, rabble, he retorted, making everyone shut up. Oh yeah, I'd forgotten. Bakugo's shooting for Yua High, isn't he? The teacher spoke, forgetting the importance. You mean that national level academy? Isn't its entrance exam difficulty rating as high as 79? Yeah, and it's hyper-competitive to get in, right? You done running your mouths, peons? I got a nut on the mock test. And I'm the only one at this school who's got a chance. He jumped on his desk. I'm gonna surpass even that all-might bastard as top hero. And I'm gonna carve my name into the ranks of the higher bracket taxpayers. Gwahahaha. He laughed at the dream that reached the top-ranked hero. Now that you mention it, didn't Midoriya want to go to Yua as well? The teacher inquired, which everyone stopped their babbling and booing on Katsuki. Katsuki himself stopped what he was doing and glared at Izuku. Usually being the quirkless one, everyone would laugh at him as when they did before. But not today. Today was different. They all knew one thing that had proven him since the start of their junior high classes. Midoriya Izuku was strong. They didn't know what he had done to get strong, but they wouldn't even dream to know about it. As if this fucking loser is gonna get into Yua. I'm the only one that going to Yua. You hear that, you piece of shit? Katsuki cursed, readying to make small explosions onto his palms and plan how to assault the boy. Izuku would cower behind, stuttering at what words he should answer. But that wasn't the case right now. His mind changed so much that Katsuki's taunts and provocations didn't faze him much. He was ready to counter him, but somehow, he didn't need to do it right now. Right now, somebody else would do it. Oi, quiet down. I can barely think with your yapping. Everyone's eyes turned toward the source of the voice, and stared at the one who could match Katsuki's strength, if not more, and the only one that is more than capable of being a hero. Takahashi Junpei. Quit thinking that you are better than anybody else, Kaken. Junpei acted bored, scratching his ear in disinterest. That pride of yours wouldn't work out well as a hero. Everyone knew that Junpei came from a family of heroes. Everyone knew that he had an amazing quirk, or most likely quirks, as they hadn't known how someone like him had been blessed with 2 quirks. Few people knew about this. And everyone knew that he was the only one capable of stopping Katsuki when he felt like it. Mostly when Katsuki wanted to bother Izuku. The few kids that had known Junpei since they were kids thought that magic eyes was his main quirk. But as soon as they were 8 years old, they had noticed 2 horns popping on his forehead, and had been told about him having a second quirk. Students that didn't know about it rumored that his 2 quirk was a vague description about his quirk, and deemed that those rumors were all in one. Just wasn't prepared yet for the horns and the monstrous strength that came with it as his body grew up just as his quirk. You are what they say. A fish in a barrel or a small frog in a big pond. Am I right? He grinned. Huh. What is that supposed to mean? Shitty eyes, Katsuki growled challengingly, getting close to his temper and about to blast his ass off. Junpei looked at how worked up was Katsuki and continued with a snort. Come on, man. I know that constant usage of your quirk will render one day deaf. But I didn't think that it has started with that. He taunted. Get on with it. Junpei waved his hand in circle as an explanation. Look, you might think you have the best quirk out of everyone in this room, and maybe in another class. He hummed with a slight nod. True, your explosion quirk has many things that can be considered flashy, but that's not all. Katsuki almost smirked at the way his rival declared his quirk the best. But that was short-lived when Junpei stood up from his seat, almost dwarfing Katsuki with his massive height, as he was the tallest of the class, and looked at him in the eye. Look around you. While most of them aren't capable of fighting frontline like you, there are a few that can be used to other things like rescue, support, recon, and infiltration. Junpei stated firmly, earning a grateful look for the other students. The if only they were ready for the real world instead of their fantasies, and prepared for it was unsaid, which nobody but Izuku grasped the idea. But you overlook one thing, Kaken. He grinned as he leaned over him, his eyes lightening darkly as he stared to his eyes, barely making Katsuki uncomfortable with the pressure. I'm also going to join the UA entrance exam as my siblings and parents did before. You are not the only one in this school that wants to get into the finest school of heroes in Japan, you know. Both of them exchanged dangerous sparkles that it could lit up a forest. Junpei decided that he should wrap this up, so he leaned back and grinned at Izuku. Still though, heroism doesn't mean anything if you don't have a heart to it. Quirk or no quirk. I wouldn't be surprised if Izuku gets to UA with how selfless he is. While most of them wouldn't agree on that, a few nodded in agreement, as they had small conversations or interaction with Izuku, and knew how good of a guy he is. Katsuki didn't take well that the nerd was pampering because of Junpei. So, Junpei continued with a drawl. Don't underestimate the people. You aren't the only one taking the entrance exam. If you think that you are at the top, I'll punch you off your high horses. He finished with a grin. Katsuki glared at him before scoffing indifferently. Teachi, just because you two trained with that old fart doesn't mean shit. If I recall correctly, Izuku interrupted dryly, everyone looking at him while Katsuki glared. That old fart that you mentioned kicked you 9 shades of asses because you wanted to take charge on every student and beat them up just to feed up your ego and pride. That story was true because during the first years of training under Arata's tutelage, Katsuki got words from Mitsuki, which she still talked with Inko and Hideko, which Junpei and Izuku had joined up a dojo. When he knew of this, he decided to join up too to the dojo, and wanted nothing more to win over the students and be the best over Junpei and Izuku. But it ended up backfiring him, as he had tuned out the Grandmaster's words of being humble and gentle with others. He did the opposite to yell at other students, and overwhelming them with his quirk. While using their quirks in the dojo wasn't prohibited, he was too far with others, and even dismissed them like the worms they were. Arata, God bless his patience, was starting to thin out, and he had warned him about it countless times. But even so, Katsuki would either ignore or tune him out, thinking that the words of an old man wouldn't be important. Arata's patience broke up when Katsuki was about to finish a student when he had surrendered. He immediately subdued him without quirk and growled out, blowing out the kai that he used to Zakai's mother at him. His words were the next. If you dare to attack a student when they surrendered, you don't have the mind of a hero. Get out of my dojo and never come back. Oh, the students had seen Arata getting mad and all, but that kind of anger was even surprising for Junpei and Izuku, as they knew how gentle their master was. Junpei wondered what type of man he was before opening the dojo. So, what? Katsuki snorted, internally shuddering from that flashback, as he was mostly affected from it. You ain't got anything, Deku. Junpei snorted in return. Deku, even if the years had passed by and Izuku had gotten better from the canon, Katsuki still called him that. The only thing that puts him over Izuku. As for Izuku, he simply sighed, closed his Future Hero Analysis Notebook Volume 13 inside his back, and sat up to get into Katsuki's face. Years of training under Arata had given him a backbone to pull out this stunt against his former friend and bully. While I applaud you for remind everyone that you are the smartest of the class, Izuku drawled sarcastically. I should remind you that the 3 of us aced the mock test and tied first place. Everyone knew that Katsuki was smart, but both Junpei and Izuku matched his intelligence without worries that even if the other classes banded together to study better, they wouldn't be able to match them. The three of them circled, matching their eyes evenly. The fierce flames Katsuki, the unshakable mountain Junpei, and the hidden storm Izuku. Every student present watched at the three entities that would think that three titans were about to rumble and destroy everything on their path. Ignoring the teacher's protest, Katsuki's hands began smoking and take action against these two before. Rikini Shrine. The end of the class rang throughout the school as few students sighed in relief as they wished to be out of their fights. Saved by the bell, Junpei drawled, raising an eyebrow at the roof before looking at Katsuki with a cocked eyebrow and a grin. We just got lucky. He snickered before walking back to his seat. Izuku calmly looked at Katsuki's eyes before turning around and returning to his seat. Katsuki clearly glared at both of them, as he was left humiliated by these two fuckers. Those that dare to challenge him, he will crush them with gusto. Aldera Junior High afternoon after classes. Yo, Aiken, you want to grab some ice cream on the way? Junpei asked, hanging his shoulder bag over. Sure, just let me get my things in order. Stashing his last book that he needed to study, he wore his yellow back over his back. Okay, let's go. They were about to leave the school ground to savor the frozen snack. Someone interrupted. Deku, shitty eyes. We ain't done yet, you piece of shits. Anyone could guess who interrupted them. What do you want, Kaken? Junpei groaned exasperatedly, turning to looking at Katsuki being flanked by his two lackeys. I'll make it simple, you shitheads, Katsuki snarled, walking toward them. Heroes goes to the same school and graduate from there, to which means since I'm a perfectionist by nature. You see, forget about you, little nerd. I can understand him since he comes from a family of heroes, and he's my rival. He pointed at Junpei, who he simply raised an eyebrow. But you, Deku, you are a simple quirkless. A weakling that nobody would care what you want, so listen closely. He planted a hand over Izuku's shoulder and deviously grinned. Don't even think of applying to UA, not even in hero courses. Not even the general studies, support, or business. Don't even consider going there. Understood? Izuku eyed indifferently at the smoking hand before looking at him dully. Hey, I know, Katsuki stated, which Junpei someone felt dread of what was going to happen. If you want a quirk so bad, why don't you dive off the rooftop and get an awesome quirk on you next life? That is when he crossed the line. Without warning, Izuku swiftly took off his bag, which Junpei grabbed it mid-air, grabbed on Katsuki's arm, and put him into an arm lock, his palm away from his face or body. Many students present, including Katsuki, were shocked on how Izuku was quick before they could react. The quirkless Izuku was holding his ground against Katsuki and was at his mercy. GRGHGH. Katsuki gritted his teeth in agony, trying to loosen up the Deku, but as he tried to get out of the arm lock, Izuku tightened his grip, making him grunt in pain. He could feel that his shoulder was about to pop out, and that meant long period of recovery, which means less time to train and be prepared for the UA, unless he makes it quick with this damn. Alright, that's enough. He got the message. Junpei interrupted. Izuku glanced up at his best friend and nodded, loosening his grip of Katsuki's arm. Katsuki grunted in agony, massaging his aching arm while glaring at them. I hope you got the message, Kaken. You had your words, and here's mine. Izuku matched Katsuki's, glared firmly. It's been my dream to attend UA. I made a promise to a friend to get into. I'm not going to break those promises for your selfish needs. Me, getting into UA won't hinder you from entering. And those words before? I'll make you take your words back. So, if we are finished. With that said, he grabbed his bag from Junpei's hand and walked away. I'll wait you outside. Junpei glanced at Katsuki for a moment after Izuku had left. He thought that these two would have been good friends from the beginning, as he had read from many fanfictions that the missus begun reading if it hadn't been because of his quirk supremacy attitude. Sighing in disappointment, he was about to leave and follow behind. Wait there, shitty eyes. Before rolling his eyes and returning to look at Katsuki, who glared at him in defiance. What? I don't get why you follow and defend him. He growled. He is just a shitty and useless Deku that wouldn't be able to become a hero, no matter how much he had trained. Junpei narrowed his eyes irritably at the way he was dissing Izuku despite he lost, so he simply scoffed and grazed him to a mocking look. And so, what should I have done then? You should have followed me instead, he declared. You wouldn't get anywhere in the future by following that nerd. This dream is worthless. Ironic that he is also a nerd and thinking that Izuku is worthless. He scoffed inwardly, thinking back. He had changed him a lot since his encounter. The only thing he regretted was putting him on his place. But he is redeemable, and there is time for it. Also, What surprised him more than ever was that Izuku managed to fight back without cowering like the canon version. Although, it infuriated him this scene, and it happened like before. If you want to be a hero so bad, there's actually a really good way. Katsuki cackled as the defenseless Izuku cried out his destroyed notes. If you believe they're holding your quirk over in the next world, you should dive off the rooftop. He quickly shook off that thought. That original timeline, Izuku was weak and defenseless. He couldn't refuse to ignore that, and maybe Izuku knew. But he was different and knew better than listening those yaps. Junpei wasn't blind to see most of the quirkless people of the world going suicide because of the stress, the shunning, the names. Adults and young people had turned up dead because of the quirk supremacy around them. He had seen the gloom face of his father, and even he showed a forced smiles to them. His mother also knew about that problem of the society that she even sympathized with the pain of her husband. Keiji and Fumiko hadn't yet found that part of the problem in the society. But it would be soon that they would understand how hard the quirkless are treated for being weak and how they live. He focused his fury at the back of his head, and mild anger showed to his face with a scoff. First off, you declared me as your rival, although that isn't the title I would take is given to someone else in second. He is much better than you, Kaken. And I believe him for what it is worth. Before Katsuki would have spoken, Junpei stood right in front of him, looming over like a dangerous predator, as the two lackeys behind cowered fearfully. Katsuki, meanwhile, was spooked by the sudden position that he slightly sweated at the back of his neck. There wasn't the cheerful demeanor he was used to, or the defiance he showed back. He looked more dangerous than any villains he had seen on TV or internet. But if you think that you and the bunch of assholes that follows you with that kind of quirk supremacy bullshit, and sprout those words to Izuku again. He droned murderously, his eyes darkening with his quirk, letting the purple flames be the only thing they could see. We're going to have bad time, got it. The two lackeys behind shivered fearfully, and the other spectators were unnerved with the way the gentle Junpei acted like that. Although a few muttered, "Karma's a bitch," or "It served him right," under their breaths, they didn't do anything. As for Katsuki, he gulped nervously and panted slightly at the way he was looking at him. Nod, if you understood. Katsuki slowly nodded, getting his fears down. Junpei's demeanor instantly shifted to a sunny expression and tapped his shoulder in friendly manner, his early action disappearing like it never happened. Glad we agreed. See you later, Kaken. With that said, he left the room and left the three bullies on their own, while the other students left, a few snickering at Katsuki's state. It took a few seconds for Katsuki to regain his ire and glared at the door Junpei had left. Damn you, shitty eyes. The next time I get to beat you, you are going down. Hard, he swore. He felt his heart pumping hard and sweating. Fortunately, it wasn't going to explode because of his quirk and tried to calm down. Oh, by the way. And his heart, just as the people around rammed hard again, when Junpei's head popped out of the door in a carefree manner. Katsuki wanted to snarl a what? To his face, but the previous conversation still had his heart pounding onto his chest, so he was left with keeping his mouth shut for once. About Izuku, you should really work on that attitude of yours, or else he is going to be much popular than you, he said cheekily. Before Katsuki could have snapped at him, Junpei waved him jauntily. That's all what I was going to say. See ya. Katsuki was left dumbfounded, but when he regained his composure enough to think straight, he did something that everyone expected from him and gave him a wide berth, even his lackeys. Shayidiyis. Oh, you heard something. Izuku wondered aloud after leaving the school grounds as he glanced at his best friend and childhood friend with a raised eyebrow. Nope, he replied, popping the pea. Nothing at all. Izuku stared at him questionably, but shrugged when he wouldn't tell him anything. Ignoring what happened today, Izuku was excited that they were close to get into the UA's entrance exam, as they had prepared for years to this moment. They only had to wait for another 10 months, and they could finally get into their dream school. And Izuku was happy that he was going to join with someone he knew well. They had wondered about going to train with Grandmaster Arata, but the shiver it ran through him. Maybe had second-guessed about training today. Luckily for them, Arata had some business to attend, so there weren't any classes today, even though they were allowed to use the dojo whenever they wanted to. Just as they minded their own business, the buzz of their phone gained their attention, and took out their phones to check. Carrot Girl. Just 10 more months to get into UA. I hope you two ain't slacking. Demon Lord. Please, Suka. The last thing we would do was slacking, just as we are near the entrance exam, you know. Small Might. Yeah, Grandmaster Arata would get our heads if we did that. The three childhood friends laughed at such implication with fear and agreement. Carrot Girl. I'll see you guys later then. Demon Lord. Sure, Suka. Small Might. Send regards to your parents. With that done, they continued their way to the ice cream shop. Nothing would get their bad mood, even as they walked under a bridge. Slurk. Well, what do we have here? An ominous voice drawled out in a sadistic way just behind them. One M-size and L-size disguises. Maybe I should kill the little one and keep the other one. He seemed much stronger than the other. As they say, bon appétit. Wait, what? He yelped in shock when a purple light engulfed him and had him immobilized completely mid-air. What's going on? Junpei looked indifferently with his quick activated while staring at the pseudo-villain. I may have spoken too soon about having a normal day. He sighed as he raised a finger toward the recycling bin. Aiken, could you please bring a plastic bottle or something to deal with this guy? Izuku nodded and went to get an empty Coca-Cola bottle of 3 liters. Junpei quickly placed the mud-like villain with a weary sigh. And I just wanted my ice cream to get my mood up. He groaned, capping tightly the bottle. You think we had enough for today? Have no fear, boys, for I'm. Guess not, Junpei drawled with a small sweat drop. From the maintenance hole that the villain emerged not seconds ago, appeared a blonde bulky man, a familiar blonde and recognizable face. Here, he mumbled in confusion when he saw them unharmed and the villain dealt with. There he was. All Might aka by a few selected people Yagi Tashinori in person, standing in front of a reincarnated man with 2 quirks and his future successor. It's All Might, Izuku as expected gushed in excitement at his favorite hero. Calm down, you're getting too much excited. Junpei rolled his eyes good naturally. Oh right, sorry. Izuku cleared his throat before continuing. All Might, I'm a huge fan of yours, and I want to be a hero like you. See, can I have your autograph? He asked nervously while offering his notes. With Junpei giving his too. Of course, the first reaction of All Might was booming in laugh. Ha ha ha, I will gladly sign to a fan of mine. He gratefully received the notes and stopped when he noted the title. HM. Future Hero Analysis Volume 13. May I take a look? He asked its owner. And no, there is no problem, Izuku replied shyly. Nodding, All Might began reading and passing through pages, and to the next page. He slowly looked pale when he discovered that the notebook had many descriptions from heroes to villains, from retired, currents, and debuted. The last page showed about a recent hero that appeared, a Mount Lady. There was a neat drawing of her with her costume, and there was a description about her quirk gigantification with an estimation on how tall she can grow, how many seconds it takes to grow and shrink, and even a small chart of stats under with power, speed, technique, range, cooperativeness, potential. Oh, my goodness. These notes are unbelievably detailed. Who would have thought if these notes were to be in a villain's hands? It makes me shudder to think about it. And it's supposed to be 12 more. He nervously glanced up at Izuku, looking up to him with respect and awe. I don't know if he could be the one. I still don't know if he's the one. I have my old sidekick's recommendation to my successor, but maybe. While All Might was in his worried thoughts, Junpei noticed his gaze and look on how nervous he was. He snorted inwardly. Of course, he would be scared or wary after seeing those notes. Even I was surprised on how Izuku wrote about mine. His detailed description and information gathering skills are nothing to scoff at. Had he turned into a villain, Japan would have been turned into a crime city with more promising investor. It's something wrong, All Might? Izuku asked nervously, wondering how long it takes to sign his notes. All Might quickly broke out of his trance, signed both notes with his signature, and returned them to their owners. Nothing wrong, citizens. Thanks for you two help me capture this villain. Although it's illegal to use your quirks without a license, I'll look the other way since it was self-defense. Izuku quickly bowed down, thankful for his time and signature. Thank you, All Might. I'll make this a family heirloom. Don't be so overdramatic, Aiken. Junpei rolled his eyes in a good naturally way while stuffing his notes back. Now I'll take this villain to the authorities. So long and farewell, citizens. I hope the next time we meet, it'll be through a TV screen. Thank you, All Might. They both bowed down as All Might disappeared with a mighty, if flashily so, through the sunset. He's so cool. Izuku mumbled in awe, watching his favorite hero disappear on the horizon. Junpei leered at Izuku, expecting him to clinch onto All Might's leg and get into that talk with the hero in hesitation on his choice. But it seemed that he had grown over that. Unknown to Junpei, he was the one who changed Izuku's view and determination to become a hero. He was the reason for his change. Welp. Junpei clasped his hands loudly in a dramatic way. With all that fiasco done, let's get our ice cream. Yeah? But first, let me call my mom to ask what's for dinner. Junpei nodded and Izuku started to make his call. What surprised the most about the change of the world for Junpei was that Inko had maintained the hourglass figure she had before being chubbier than he remembered. As Izuku didn't receive all the bullying and had someone with him instead of being alone, Inko wasn't so stressed that she ended up eating too much and being what she would have been in the story. Also, to maintain her figure, she had been going to the gym with Mitsuki and Hiko. To say that those three mothers maintained great figure had many of those industries that, well, let's be generous to say people to try to get their way to have them in their industries. Junpei watched in disgust on how people ogled them lustfully, and he thinks that he isn't the only one that wished them gone, buried 10 feet under the ground in a remote location. He felt the killing intent of many close people. Either way, Mitsuki knew better than trust them, so had both Hiko and Inko work with her and Masaru. As for Junpei's mother, as she had yet to be able to work in the hero industry, though she receives paperwork from her sidekicks, and second in command worked with Mitsuki until she recovered as a part-timer, with Genkei's approval. Still, Junpei didn't know what kind of injury she received to leave her job for a long time, as she was too stubborn to tell them about it. Well, back to the explanation about Mitsuki. From what everyone knew or not, Mitsuki worked as a model and is popular because of her quirk makes her beautiful, and had both Inko and Hiko help her with photo shoots with Masaru, being the main photographer, taking them. And also, what surprised the most was that Junpei discovered what Inko's job is, or if it was this world or not. She wasn't just working as a secretary of a simple company. She worked as a secretary of the Yaoyorozu Industries, which shocked him most. And even if Hisashi, Izuku's father who he hadn't met yet, sent them money from the States, they could have lived in a better house, but Inko preferred the apartment they lived on. Mom, are you at home? Oh, Izuku. Yes, dear. I'm at home getting ready for dinner, Inko replied. What is what you need? I am at the moment with Jukun about to get ice cream, but I'll be before dinner. Izuku hummed, looking at Junpei who was reading something on his cell phone. What are we having? We're going to have katsudon and a few side dishes. Ask Junpei-kun if he wants to join us. Okay, let me ask. Izuku turned to Junpei. Jukun, do you want to have dinner at my house? Junpei gave him an apologetic smile. Sorry, I can. Mom asked me to retrieve Himari-chan from her school since Keiji was sent to the hospital for something related to his job, and she had to get there. And also I received a list of groceries that I have to get. Yeah, you read it right. Keiji and Fumiko had graduated from UA and started working as heroes, or starting off as sidekicks. Where? Well, that is nothing of concern of yet. Back to the story. Oh, okay, maybe next time. Izuku returned to his call. Sorry, Mom, Jukun's busy, but I'll get to home before dinner. Alright, Izuku, don't be late. Sure, Mom, I'll see you soon. Izuku turned off the call and looked at Junpei. Shall we? With Katsuki. Those fuckers, I'll show them who the boss here is. He cursed, walking with his lackeys, kicking a can of soda in frustration. You really overdid it today, man. Entry, one with long blonde hair, which his quirk was extending his fingers to a limited range, grabbed the cigarette from the other lackey. Yeah, dude, ain't they your childhood friends, Bakugo? The lackey said as he was smoking. It's their fault for getting in my way. Katsuki clenched his fist, making an explosion once clenched, making his flunkies flinch. Shitty Eyes thinks that Deku can be a hero without a quirk. Tusk, what a joke. I don't know, man. Don't sometimes quirks make their appearance subtle? The lackey with a cigarette on his mouth asked. I mean, Raken tried to punch Midoriya because he still thought he was quirkless, but even that didn't faze him at all. A punch from Raken could lead at least a bleeding or something, but nothing, man. It could be like fat gum, subtle yet effective. No way. I think that it mostly in that martial art they were practicing. Ench cackled. At least, he's still a punching bag if not for Takahashi. Yeah, he stops us anytime he appears. Katsuki raged by kicking a plastic jar full of liquid as he could vent his anger and frustration, letting it bounce on the wall into a recycle bin, only to make the cap unseal itself. He turned on his back to face in anger once he smelt smoke. And another thing, didn't I tell you to quit smoking? If we're found out, my recommendation letter will catch flame too, asshole. But the lackeys didn't answer, as they were making their eyes widen in fear and pointing at the source of it. Nice, a new guy's, and one with tasty quirk too. The villain cackled evilly before taking his new hostage. With all might, or Yagi Toshinori, had made few leaps to one roof to another before landing on one to rest. He began to emit smoke and coughed a bit of blood before transforming back into his skinnier form, or his real form. I'll just take a few minutes of rest and return to the job. Toshinori sighed wearily. My time is slowly decreasing each usage. I need to pass the torch soon. I'll have to take the opportunity Nezu told me back then. Toshinori had to really need to pass the torch of his quirk, and because of his injury which resulted in a fight years back, ended up with a third of his stomach and half his lungs. Suddenly, he heard an explosion a few blocks away where he jumped past. Grimacing by the thought of his error, he checked his pockets to see if the sealed villain was there. But in the all luck that Mother Luck could bless him, today it wasn't the day. He paled when the plastic jar was missing. Oh no, he gasped in dread as he quickly ran down the stairs to retrieve the villain. With Junpei and Izuku, both childhood friends were walking nowhere while eating their ice cream. While Izuku ordered green tea flavored with chocolate chip on it, Junpei ordered caramel flavored with sprinkles. I'm still surprised on how much sugar you can eat, Jukun, Izuku said, eating his own ice cream with joy. Ain't you worried about cavities or something before your 30s? PFT, cavities? What should I get worried about? Junpei declared, showing his teeth. I know how to keep my teeth healthy. Unlike Kaken, who keeps damaging his teeth with his forceful brushing like a madman. Haha, yeah, it was a big shock from us during the time we went camping together and Kaken began shouting while brushing his teeth. Izuku snickered before sobering and looking better at Junpei's teeth. What's wrong? He asked curiously. I don't know if it is just me, Izuku hummed. But were your teeth ever sharp? Huh, what's wrong with you? Junpei scoffed, resuming on eating his ice cream. If I had known about that, I would have noticed it first. Izuku processed it for a few seconds before shrugging in acceptance. All right. Still though, Kaken's attitude doesn't get any newer that I'm getting tired of his bullshit. Hey, language. Junpei chastised playfully. Boom. Boom. The sudden explosion got both of their attention. While one looked at it curiously, the other knew better. It's time, Junpei thought before shoving the last of his ice cream to his mouth. Let's see what's going on. Izuku nodded, eating the last of his ice cream, and they ran toward the source of the explosion. Oh. Junpei and Izuku arrived on the scene to see many bystanders looking over something, while there were a few heroes on the scene. Hey, what's going on? Izuku wondered as they finally were able to see who it was. Junpei feigned shock when he noticed who the village was. Hey, isn't that the villain we sealed in that plastic bottle? How the fuck did he escape from All Might? Yeah, how did he even get away from All Might? Izuku said, writing down on his analysis notes. This guy must be slippery to slip away from All Might himself. And when the fuck did you ever get your notes? They noticed around the heroes that were present. Death Arms was trying to focus on punching and grappling the villain, but as the sludge villain was mostly liquid, he was having a hard time against him. Kamui Woods was trying to restrain the villain and save the hostage from its grasp, but every time he tried to save the hostage, explosions and fire were destroying his quirk arbor anytime he tried. So he tried saving other misfortune civilians caught in the crossfire. Backdraft could be helpful against the sludge villain, but he was mostly in rescue-type missions, so he was more centered of putting out the fire around, preventing it from spreading. And lastly, Mount Lady was unable to do anything since the streets were narrow, so her gigantification was useless, unless she would want to step on somebody by accident. Two more heroes were also in the scene, but they were also useless at the moment. Why are all the heroes at a standstill? One of the civilians voiced out in wonder. The guy's got some middle schooler hostage and abusing of his quirk. None of the heroes can get closer without harming the hostage. Another answered. Izuku pondered which kind of hero would be perfect for such situation. But that thought was interrupted when Junpei tapped his shoulder and pointed forward. Aiken, I know that you love thinking about heroes and all, but Junpei said slowly in dread. Isn't that? Izuku looked forward trying to understand what he was talking about when he noticed who the one was being the hostage. His childhood friend Bakugo Katsuki was being held as hostage, and when he noticed his eyes, he bolted forward without hesitation. Damn it, Aiken, Junpei shouted, following behind. And none of the heroes were able to stop them. Hey, kids, get back here, Death Arms shouted. Yagi Toshinori was frustrated when he let the villain escape from his hands, and because of his injury, He was having a hard time to transform into his buff form and deal with it instantly, just as his golden years. But because of it, he couldn't do anything. He was pathetic, unable to do anything against a villain when it was standing just close to him. But something caught his eyes and everyone else. 2 kids that he recognized bolted out of the group toward the villain, and he felt a dreading feeling when he knew who those 2 kids were. He internally screamed in shock on how such kids were acting recklessly. Not only Toshinori noticed them, but also the sludge villain and Katsuki noticed them coming toward him. Those brats, the sludge villain growled angrily. Katsuki only could widen his eyes in shock as he kept struggling to get out of the grasp of the villain. The villain shot his tendrils at the kids, willing to kill them here and there. But what surprised everyone was that those kids dodged the tendrils with ease, as if they were dancing. Not even a grace. Civilians, heroes, and the sludge villain were shocked of how perfectly some kids ran toward the villain and dodged all the attacks, spinning, sidestepping, even jumping over. These kids were basically good on their eyes. Izuku then began recalling in one of his notebook about Kamui Wood's skills and quickly kicked a nice, shaped pebble toward the villain's eye, earning a painful wince. The sudden wince made his hold on Katsuki lessen, making him able to breathe. "Izuku, go save him, I'll distract him," Junpei said, grabbing a trash bin's cap and throwing it like a frisbee, nailing on his other eye. "Og, you son of a..." Izuku grasped the opportunity that Junpei brought to him to jump toward Katsuki and pulling him out. "Pull him, kid, pull!" Death Arms shouted, breaking out of his trance and rushing forward with the other available heroes. "Nuwo!" The sludge villain roared as he tried to bring his hostage back, before flinching back for another pebble hitting on his eye. "You brat!" he growled as he glared fiercely at Junpei, who shot at him with a flip of his thumb the pebble. "Your body might be sludgy and capable of tanking bludgeon attacks." Junpei grinned as he prepared with both hands with many small pebbles like a gunslinger. "But that doesn't mean about your eyes." Before the sludge villain could say anything, his hold on Katsuki was lessened to the point that he could get out and make his day worse. "Let me go, you fucker!" Katsuki howled as he took the chance to blow his biggest explosion on the sludge villain. The sludge roared in pain as both Izuku and Katsuki fell down next to Junpei. "You guys, okay?" he asked as he helped Izuku up. "Yeah, we're fine," Izuku answered. Junpei was about to help Katsuki, but he slapped his hand away and got up by himself. "You two. Why the hell are you two helping me?" "Mostly you, Deku," Katsuki demanded with a growl. "Geez, thanks for saving me, guys. I appreciate. Is that so hard, Kaken?" Junpei drawled sarcastically. "My legs started to move on their own," Izuku told him. "But despite the facts that we don't get along, I still want to be a hero. And it's a hero's job to put his or her life on the life. Also, your eyes were pleading for help." Toshinori felt like something struck his spine when he heard the green-haired kid say that. "Can it be that I really found my successor? The next torchbearer?" he thought with a smile. Junpei believed that Izuku was a kind heart that would do anything to save a life, and that made him grin proudly. "All right, you two, step back. I think I'm going to finish him with a bang." When he mentioned that, despite their history, both of them shivered in dread at what was coming. They quickly ran back toward the others and hastily warned them to cover their ears. While they were confused, the way that Izuku and Katsuki warned them, it made them to believe them and cover their ears. "So, villain," Junpei grinned as he waved his arms in preparation for what was coming. "Have you ever felt a shockwave up close? You little shit, I'll kill you." The sludge villain roared as he lunged at him, which the heroes tried to help the kid. Just according to Keikaku, Junpei grinned. His sleeves slightly rolled back to notice the 2 metallic arm guards that were hidden on his sleeves. 60% limit. The gadget hummed accordingly at its master's order and calibrated to the limit it was ordered. The villain was so close to the kid that the heroes began running to help the helpless kid despite the warning they got. Wrong choice to stop covering their ears. Junpei got into a pre-hug pose before the next thing that happened. It would have left them speechless. Clap. The sudden clap brought forth a shockwave that the heroes who ignored had to double their effort to not feel the pain in their ears, while those that heard the warning before gritted their teeth. But the villain was not as lucky as the chain of reaction of that shockwave had rendered the villain's body incapable of maintaining his form, which he begun to tear down. What is wrong with me?" he roared in excruciating pain as his body began dismembering unwillingly. Walls of concrete began spider webbing in cracks, as the shockwave was too much for them to hold. After that, everyone watched in awe how a kid managed to create a shockwave of that magnitude, and saw the remains of the unconscious villain on the ground, while the kid laughed aloud. Gahahaha, that was fun. I haven't done anything like this since 3 years ago. He cackled aloud but sobered quickly when he felt sparks coming out of his arm guards. He grimaced when he noticed the damage of his arm guards. While he knew that they were capable of making him loose, they were still on the prototype stage despite Mei had upgraded them forward. Aw shit, not again. Mei's going to kill me. Multiple bystanders started cheering him, and he even noticed that All Might was dumbfounded, in his skeletal form. The heroes, subsequently, collected the bits of villain that was scattered, and delivered them safely to the cops. What a day to start of a new popularity. He smiled sheepishly as his arm guards continued sparking in damage. Did I really find the next torchbearer of One for All? Toshinori thought, glancing at Izuku opening his eardrums, as did his friend next to him. Rising to the top. Oh man, I didn't think that having that much of reporters was tiring, Junpei whined tiredly. At least it wasn't that bad, Izuku tried to comfort his friend. Flashback. What you did was reckless and dangerous. Death Arms was scolding Izuku with Kamui Woods next to him. You could have died, and it wasn't necessary to risk your life like that. Katsuki and Junpei were seated elsewhere with other heroes around them. The former wasn't listening at all, and the latter was putting a forced smile despite being complimented. You two are tough customers. Once you two become a pro, I'd love to make you two my sidekicks while in training. The reporters seemed more interested in Katsuki and Junpei praises than the scolding Death Arms on Izuku. Anyways, Death Arms whispered in a conspiring form while leaning on Izuku. It's good to see young people like you with a heroic heart. To tell the truth, that villain would have been hard for us, but with you and your friend, there weren't any casualties or injuries. So I hope you hit me up in my agency. I'd love to have you and your friend as my sidekicks, teach you two some moves. Hey. Kamui Woods interrupted. I don't know much, but I assure you that this kid's build is better for my agency. As if I would let you, Kamui. These kids have the mind and strength of a hero like me, so they should come to my agency. They continued arguing with each other, and Izuku felt better to think that some heroes were grateful for his actions. Just before Junpei comes out of the reporter's sight and getting closer to Izuku. Hey, let's go. He said before thanking both Death Arms and Kamui Woods to make their escape. Flashback end. God, if we're going to live like that once we become heroes, I would prefer having a minimum of reporters following my ass off. Junpei said, rolling his eyes tiredly. Well, we'll see how we go then. Izuku laughed sheepishly. Just then, some called from behind. Deku, shitty eyes. They turned their backs to see Katsuki panting. His rugged breathing didn't betray his mood and eyes, as they were glaring fiery at them. Why you helped me? Why you both helped me? He shouted despite his lack of air could vent all his fury on them. Izuku and Junpei looked at each other before they could come up with an answer. Because. Izuku started. Because your eyes were pleading for help. And even if you're an ass on us, we're still friends, Junpei added, even if internally was debating what words could come up to him. He was taken back from his answer, but put up with his glares. I never asked to be saved, least of all by you two, but especially you, Deku. He pointed at the said person. In fact, you didn't save me, right? I did it alone. I won't let a quirkless, worthless little rodent like you look down on me. Do you think I owe you some kind of favor? Don't you dare fucking look down on me, you shitty goddamn nerd. With that, he turned back and went on his own. There was one thing Izuku and Junpei were thinking and agreed on right now. He's one tough cookie. After Katsuki disappeared at the corner of the street, Junpei sighed of how their day ended. Well, since that ended well, I just remembered that I have to go get my sister, Izuku. I'll see you tomorrow. He waved at Izuku running toward Himari's school grounds. Yeah, see ya. Leaving him alone, Junpei left him with an unexpected visitor, which would change his life forever. Few minutes later. Mii-chan, you finally came. Himari was glad that nothing happened to his brother since he was late to retrieve her. Mii-chan, why did you come so late? I thought that something happened to you. She was about to cry. His little sister, Himari, was now 4 years old. She had 2 pigtails. Her hair color was indigo. Her eyes were blue. Her round-shaped head looked like a little bunny. Her quirk was named Animal Spirit, giving her the ability of the spirits of the animals that gave strength to her body that happen while her eyes change to the animal she selects, and appears marks of an animal like of tattoo to her body. She uses that in many situations. Don't worry, Himari-chan. Junpei patted her head reassuringly. I was helping a friend of mine. You did? She wiped her tears and looked at him with her shiny eyes. He was glad that she didn't end up crying, so he grabbed her bag and carried her over her shoulder. Also getting the groceries before their mother could kill him for forgetting. Takahashi household. I'm home, he said as he and Himari teleported once they finished buying their groceries. Mommy. Himari went straight to Mum, embracing her. Oh, Himari-chan, did you learn a lot in school? Yes, the teacher said to us to draw our family, and I did it. She showed her crayoned colored picture of their family. Oh, that's nice, dear. Let's put it on the fridge to see it. Putting the groceries aside, Keiji came to Junpei all bandaged up since he was now a licensed hero. Hey, little brother, how was your day? He asked, lifting the groceries. Not much, considering that Kaken is a prick with Izuku, as always, even our classmates. Anything else that I should talk about is nothing new. He shrugged. That guy. Why does he always pick on the little Izuku? He is a saint. I don't know what his problem is. Fumiko complained as she grabbed the groceries. Don't know. But he has his reasons. Yeah, a reason to bully Izuku-kun. Fumiko pouted angrily. His family was kind enough to hang out with Izuku. Though the first time he met his parents, he went hours and hours asking them about their jobs as heroes. For his siblings, he was the saint one among others of our so-called friends from elementary to junior high, and Katsuki was the worst one. For Himari, Izuku was like a third big brother. He would kindly play with her and explain to her how awesome heroes are. But thanks to Junpei, they were hardly worried since he was a good friend. Don't badmouth him so much. Izuku had to save him from a villain. He informed, which made everyone freeze in shock, except Himari, who already heard him before, but didn't know how to react when he mentioned a villain. What do you mean, Junpei? Yui asked, surprised. Well, the villain had taken Katsuki hostage. He was a sludge-type villain, so grabbing him was impossible. Many heroes were there, but they couldn't do anything. But the only that did something was Izuku. He and I managed to rescue Katsuki from it, and I gave the villain the special bang. His siblings winced remembering the sound of that clapping 3 years ago. It wasn't something someone that gained a quirk could do it in 1 year. Didn't you watch it on the news? Sorry, I was training during those hours, so I didn't have time to watch it, Fumiko admitted. I was with your brother bandaging him from his reckless actions, Yui said. I said it was an accident. I didn't know that the villain would use the debris to stop me, Keiji objected. Just then their father Genkei arrived home. Hello family, I'm back. Daddy. Himari was the only one that hugged Dad as the others were still in place. What's wrong? Genkei asked curiously, but at least concerned that every family member was standing in shock. Dear. Junpei raised an eyebrow, thinking that he had said something bad. Our son. He defeated his first villain. Really? Where? Aw, I wish I had been there myself, Genkei cried in distress for missing it. My first villain was when I was an intern back when I was still a student, Keiji said, puffing his chest proudly. Well, my first villain was when I had to chase him through an alley, and I had to fight various grunts to get him, Fumiko commented. The family continued telling their first villain and fights through the night. Junpei expected to be scolded because of his naivety and stupid mouth, but they took it unexpectedly great. But first, he had to make a call. Hello? Mei, it's me. Oh hey, Junpei-kun, what is it? Mei asked, which there was a buzzing sound of something she was working on. Do you think that I could pass through your warehouse to have my arm guards checked? A pause could be heard from the other side of the call. Did something happen with my babies? Yeah, he answered with a pang of guilt. Tell me what happened first. After a brief explanation of what occurred, Mei was silent before answering with a tone Junpei should have expected with their friendship. Welp, I did know that your strength was similar to All Might, but I have to admit that even that is a new record, Junpei-kun. Junpei didn't know or think that she could take calmly. Aren't you mad? He asked unsurely. You mean about that slapping? Of course not. That is going to be another way to upgrade those babies to further beyond. I'm always happy to make my babies better, Junpei-kun. Who do you think I am? He sighed in relief, knowing that Mei was the typical scary type at all, but the challenging one. All right, I take back my words. So, next week? Yeah, I'll see you next week. And if someone asks why she didn't know beforehand, I may think that she was too busy inventing equipment, and that which she never took a glance other news, rather than electronics gadget, and that. With that, Junpei hanged up his phone to rest, just before he received another text. Jukun, get into the voice call. The message was from Izuku. But why does he want to talk through the computer? He walked toward his desk and turned on his computer. Putting on his headset with a microphone attached, contacted Izuku, which he didn't know that someone else joined the voice call. It was Itsuka Kendo. Hello, Itsuka. Junpei leaned back on his seat, looking at his friends. Don't you hello Itsuka me, you two idiots. What were you two thinking? Itsuka shouted, almost deafening both boys from the screaming of the girl. It seems that you already knew what happened in the news? Izuku asked nervously. No, I was at the museum watching various pieces of art. She answered sarcastically. Of course I saw it, dummy. Why do you think that I am distressed? Relax, Itsuka. Junpei tried to calm her down. We didn't do much, rather than save Kaken from a sludge villain. You mean the arrogant bastard that came one day at the dojo to show off, only for Grandmaster Arata kick his ass and tell him not to come back unless he changes? She asked boldly. Yeah, him. Who do you think would put so much ego on him, rather than endeavor? Izuku nodded with a long-ass sigh. Should I be concerned that Jukun clapped his hands so hard that shocked the bystanders and heroes present? That, my friend, are simply details. He chimed with a shrug. Besides, I wasn't going to let myself and Izuku get killed by that guy. I mean, he was a joke. He scoffed. You and your sense of humor, Itsuka sighed. Well, I'm glad that you two are fine. I'm hoping to see you both at the entrance exam of UA in 10 months. Yes, ma'am. Aye. All right, I'll see you two next time. Bye, Itsuka. Good night, Itsuka. Kendo household. Itsuka leaned back on her seat after disconnecting from the voice call. One of these days, those two are going to be the death of me. She sighed wistfully with a slight smile before glancing at a picture frame next to her computer. It was an old picture of her with both Junpei and Izuku when they started their training under Grandmaster Arata. She was at the center winking at the camera with a V sign in both hands. Junpei was crossing his arms while smirking, and Izuku was shyly posing at the camera, which made Itsuka smile at those old memories. And if anyone guesses, I made the photo frame from a familiar anime reference. She only needed to wait 10 months before she could meet them again. But somehow, she couldn't place her word that among the three of them, Junpei was the one who changed the most, yet she feels that she had missed something during the voice call. She shrugged, thinking that it wasn't that important, so she went to the dining room to get dinner with her parents. Takahashi household. Well, that's another day to remember about it, he said to himself before turning off his computer and making his way to his bed. Time for me to get busy, he declared, thinking about what new training he should do before closing his eyes to sleep. 2 days later, Daigaba Municipal Beach Park, 6 m. I wonder why All Might asked me to come to the Daigaba Municipal Beach Park. Flashback 2 days ago. Izuku saw Junpei run away to retrieve his sister from her elementary school. So as he was about to return to his home, an unexpected visitor came to him. Young Midoriya, All Might boomed in his sudden arrival. All Might, what are you doing here? Izuku asked, surprised to see his favorite hero again. I came with a proposition with you. It's just Chebufk. All Might spat blood before returning to his original form. All Might, are you okay? Izuku screamed. Luckily nobody was in the zone, so they couldn't have heard or seen them at all. Why yeah, I'm fine. Toshinori wiped the blood off his mouth. Sorry if I'm surprised you in this form, young Midoriya. Well, Izuku started rubbing his neck sheepishly. I had my grandmaster tell me that sometimes you can't judge people from outside, but from the inside. You're All Might from inside and outside, so I shouldn't judge you for that, Izuku admitted. Though, if I was from back, then I could have accused you from being an imposter or something. Toshinori couldn't help but chuckle. It wasn't a few minutes that he met him, and he already likes him. In any case, which I'm here, I came here for a proposition. Toshinori started. I hadn't the slightest feeling in you when I first met you back when your friend gave me the sludge villain. And I blamed myself because of my reckless mistake that almost took a life of a civilian, so I felt guilty that life would end because of me. And I didn't do anything because of my time limit. Izuku nodded silently, hearing his explanation. But when I saw you run to save your friend despite the danger, I had the feeling that you had the biggest heart of a hero in you, even if there were various heroes present. And after you saved that kid, you told him that your feet moved before your mind told you what to do. That's the real quality of hero should be, he said, complimenting that he is seeing the next symbol of peace in front of him. All Might. So young Midoriya, here is my proposition. Toshinori paused, making the tension in the air heavier. Izuku surely had gulped 2 or 3 times, waiting for him to finish before Toshinori finished. Do you want to be my successor? Toshinori asked, which Izuku looked at him in a surprised expression. Why, yes, he answered, not making it like a shouting. Toshinori finally found his successor, and now it was the time to take action for his training. Meet me at the Dagaba Municipal Beach Park in 2 days, young Midoriya. Eh? Flashback end. Izuku groaned loudly, thinking what could have been the reason before letting a sigh in defeat. Nothing. I got nothing why All Might wants me to go there. Apart from that, I'm his successor. In any case, Izuku went there to see why All Might wanted him there. And once he arrived, he was welcomed with the sight of trash. He felt disgusted. Trash. Trash everywhere, from the beautiful sand, shining with the lights of the risen sun, and the colorful sea. All the trash that was left was destroying the beauty of the beach. Ah, young Midoriya, you finally came, Toshinori said, welcoming his successor. All Might. Why are we here? He asked curiously before Toshinori raised his hand. Before we start, I'll explain the reason for me finding a successor. Oh, okay? Izuku nodded. But call me Toshinori Yagi. We don't want anybody to see me like this, if you keep calling me by my hero name, right? Yeah, I understand, Yagi-san. All right. The reason why I chose you to become my successor, and listen carefully, that this is very important, is because my time as the symbol of peace is about to end. A pregnant pause descended between the hero and student, which was understandable since All Might let that bomb suddenly. What? He was dumbfounded at the hero's declaration. It is just as you heard, young Midoriya. But why? You're the All Might, the #1 hero that would defeat his enemies and smile at the civilian, assuring that everything is fine. Izuku said, which Toshinori nodded, understanding what he meant. It is because of this. Toshinori raised his shirt, showing a nasty scar on the left side of his abdomen. This is one of the reasons that the symbol of peace is nearing to its end. I got this injury from a villain 5 years ago. Izuku almost winced at the nasty scar Toshinori got. My respiratory system is in shambles, and my stomach was scooped out. I've wasted away from constant surgeries and their complications, and I've been reduced to a maximum of around 3 hours of heroics every day. 5 years ago, Izuku trailed off. Was it your fight with Super Venom Chainsaw? Toshinori scoffed, shaking his head. You know your stuff, but no. I wouldn't dream a thug like him take me down easily. He boomed in pride before softening. No, my quirk, one for all, as the name suggests, can make successors when their old bearer has his or her time over to give it to another, so that the quirk itself can grow. But it also has an arch nemesis that I plan to defeat it once and for all. When he mentioned his arch nemesis, I felt that he had some kind of bad encounter with that villain. Just like me and Kaken, Izuku thought, recalling that form he speaks of him when he faces him. I know that you aren't ready yet to face him, but I'm planning to at least make you ready for the upcoming battles. So, he changed back to his hero form. We're here to make sure that you can success one for all by cleaning all the trash. Okay, All Might. He nodded before walking down the beach and starting to clean by carrying various junks with ease. Toshinori was surprised that his successor was strong. He had to check on something. Young Midoriya? Yes, All Might? He looked back, still carrying the junks. Did you have some kind of training beforehand? Which it surprises me that you can lift those junks with ease. Well, I did train since I was 4, so yeah. I'm strong enough even though I'm quirkless. Toshinori paused, syncing the new information he received just a second ago. He deflated to his original form before asking. You're quirkless and you're that strong? Well, yeah, I said that it's just that it was my dream to become a hero, and when nobody believed in me. My best friend Jukun told me that I should be prepared if I wanted to become one. So we went to a dojo together and trained to go into UA, to graduate to become fully licensed heroes like you. And if anyone forgot, it's in Chapter 3. Izuku then recalled the day when he left, mentioned that even with quirk, he would still be his friend. He let a smile form on his lips, which Toshinori noticed. He must be quite a good friend, if you speak highly of him like that. Yeah, he's my best friend that anyone would wish for, Izuku admitted, showing his smile brightly. As for Junpei. Achoo. Bless you, Oni-chan, Himari said, handing him a tissue. Did you catch a cold? Yui asked while preparing breakfast. No, Mom, I did not. I just felt that someone mentioned my name. He waved his hand in dismissal while cleaning his nose of snots. Maybe Mei-chan is talking about you. Genkei popped from the kitchen with a teasing tone. Duh, Junpei groaned at the stupidly logic behind. Back with Izuku. Well, then if it is like this. Could you let me see your body? Toshinori asked bluntly. See my what? Izuku asked with a blank expression. What do you mean, Yagi-san? Ah, sorry, I didn't explain myself. I'm referring that if I could see the structure of your body, to come up with a training program for you to inherit one for all. I see. He sighed in relief and did as ordered, taking everything off except his All Might-themed boxers. Ignoring that his successor is wearing merchandise of his signature hero name, Toshinori analyzed his body. Lean body structure, balanced muscle shapes, good flexibility around your body. It's good that your body is good to success one for all. You think so? Jukun said that I could take a balanced training in both strength and agility. Izuku informed, putting on his clothes. He raised an eyebrow, planting his hand on his chin in a thoughtful manner. He did. What kind of training did he do, young Midoriya, if I may ask? Well, Jukun was keen on learning strengthening and endurance pieces of training, such as he has a sturdy body. He did learn some speed-type training with his legs, but he said that he would try to do those two first. A powerhouse first, then balancing out. That ain't a bad idea if you were to be pressured at first. Toshinori hummed. You have to gain a lot of stamina to keep in a prolonged battle. Still, he wasn't bad on letting you keep up in strength and agility. I hope that your friend did a great job on your decision. Izuku smiled. In any case, it's good that if you hadn't trained before and I had transferred my quirk, your limbs would have blown off from the lack of strength. He stated naturally, which Izuku flinched in a pause, turning his attention slowly to his mentor. Izuku paled, shivering at what Toshinori finished saying. He wouldn't dream what he would have happened if Jukun hadn't told him to train before. My limbs would what? Your limbs could have blown up from your incompatibility with your body. He explained, confirming the fear of his blown limbs. Oh, thank God that Jukun was with me with the recommendation. If not, I wouldn't be alive in those hellish years. Izuku sighed internally. As we're speaking, I should make some changes in your American Dream plan to keep up with One for All. Yeah, there is no problem, he shrugged. So to you to receive One for All, let me start from the top. He changed into his hero form and pulled off a strand of hair. This is something I was once told: something that you receive is because you are lucky, and something that you are given is because you are recognized, are different in essence. Take that to heart. Izuku nodded with a smile. I received the help of my closest friend, and because of him, I am what I am today, to support me despite all the odds against me. And I am blessed to be alive. This is the power that you earned because of your own effort. He presented his strand of hair and told him the next thing, which most of the people would be baffled or shocked. Eat this. Izuku paused, blanked at what All Might just said, and the only thing he could muster to speak was, To inherit One for All, you must ingest the current torchbearer's DNA. You should be glad that hair is the least disgusting part of the human body you can digest. Izuku grimaced at the thought of eating or drinking what other DNA he would be obliged to ingest. Don't you worry, young Midoriya. I've washed my hair before coming here and making sure there was nothing in my scalp. So eat it. He stated with the serious expression he mustered while handing him the strand of hair. Guess it's bottoms up. Izuku gulped, hesitant of eating his hero's hair. Do you have water, Yagi-san? After handing him a bottle of water, Izuku looked at the strand of hair before putting it on his mouth. Rapidly putting the water in his mouth, he felt the water wash the hair down and gaggled once he finished the bottle. I've never been so disgusted to eat hair. He retched in disgust. All Might boomed his famous laugh. Yeah, I get that feeling. I did also felt hesitant to eat the hair of the previous torchbearer, young Midoriya. After feeling that the hair reached to his stomach, he sighed in relief. Do you think it worked? Of course it does, young Midoriya. It will take a few hours for your body to metabolize my hair to properly use One for All. All Might explained. For your training today, I came to know of this place on the net yesterday. It was left to rot like this for those who know how many years. I see. Izuku looked around at various piles of garbage and junk. All this stuff floated in with the ocean currents and piled up here. And since locals ignore this place, illegal dumping takes advantage of it. Right. That's about that. All Might nodded. So as you may know, young Midoriya, heroes didn't used to be obsessed with flashiness. Most heroes are into fame, glory, and fortune, but I am different. The hero game ought to be a labor of love. People claim it plain. But I won't let the fundamentals get fuzzy. I believe that volunteer work is the heart of heroism, so let's bring the beach from its glorious view from before. Yes, sir. I love your enthusiasm, young Midoriya. So go and do your job, young Midoriya. I see this. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Then I'll have to go further beyond. With that, Izuku commenced his training with all might with a challenging mind. 4 days later with Junpei. Junpei was walking toward the place he needed repairs for his arm guards. He could simply teleport in front of the warehouse. But he loved sightseeing the streets, as it takes the joy of it. Being in front of the familiar warehouse, he knocked on a chorus before he waited outside. Thinking, should he give her some kind of brainstorming ideas? Mei was a keen girl on learning, so he shouldn't be worried about it. Mei is smart despite the oddness of love in her creations, but inside that bizarreness, she was quite a rare flower he didn't think she could show. Steps could be heard from the inside before Natsumi opened the doors, waking him from his thoughts. "Hello, future hero. You just came at the right time." She beamed in an unfamiliar expression that Junpei didn't know what it was before she stepped aside. "Come in. You know Hatsune-san that I have a name, right?" Junpei asked as he entered the warehouse. "Of course I know, but some traits are hard to break, you know?" She answered with a shrug. "You know that I said it like that since I know you can be a hero, so until then I'll keep saying you future hero." Right. I'm not bothered, by the way," he said, looking around to search his female engineer friend. "Mei, your friend came," Natsumi shouted, which Mei popped out from a corner holding various utilities and blueprints in excitement. "Oh hey Junpei, you just came at the right time." She walked toward them, now having the exact height she had in the series, being 5'11", 54 centimeters, but still dwarfing her completely. Junpei looked back at Natsumi, which she raised her eyebrow in wonder. "I said it once, and I'll keep saying it. This is the literal definition of déjà vu, like mother and daughter." "Thanks for the compliment, future hero, but you should keep attention at what brought you." Natsumi pointed. "Oh, right, here it is." He handed the custom-made briefcase with his arm guards inside. "I may have used too much strength in that slap." "At what happened in the news 2 days ago?" Natsuki asked in wonder and amazement. "Yeah, not my finest moment, but that villain had it coming since he took a friend of mine as a hostage." He crossed his arms with a bothered expression. "Well, if you say it like that, he had it coming." She shrugged before looking at Mei. "Mei, stay with the future hero and repair what he brought." "Yes, Mom," Mei answered, and with a nod, Natsumi went to another section to work on something. So now, paying attention at the arm guards, Mei had put the arm guards under maintenance, as 3 others before did. "It's going to the salvageable or scraps this time?" Junpei asked. She put on her new steampunk goggles and focused on the arm guard's damage. "This time is salvageable. Most of the previous ones couldn't withstand most of your power, and these babies were able to nullify your maximum power to a certain point. But even so, these babies' armor were chipped and bent, and inside the circuits had burned off, but luckily the core of these babies was undamaged." She continued explaining the details of the damage. "Still, a better record than last time if I'm being honest. Guess you should upgrade them, and also I'm for new ideas." Mei looked at him with a bright smile. "This is why I like you, my friend. You always have new ideas for my babies." Junpei rolled his eyes playfully before continuing. "For my new idea, you could make something to make me change my limits without saying. I don't know, body language, finger tipping, commanding it in my mind, something like that. Commanding it with your mind. Now that's something I would like to try." Mei skipped happily, writing the ideas down on her notebook. What else? You could make something like the arm guards, but instead of my legs, you know. I wouldn't want to kick somebody and breaking a femur or ribs like that." Mei giggled at the thought. "Or maybe if you kicked somebody on the face, they would fly like a football." "You wouldn't dream of it." Junpei rolled his eyes. "Well, this time is going to be difficult for your leg armors," Mei stated. Why?" He raised his eyebrow. "We ain't got enough materials to make them. My mom could always ask for more, but lately, other industries had their needs for them. The nerve of them." She huffed angrily. "And if I know of a place that has enough scrap for you to use, would you use it?" Mei widened her eyes before giving him an embracing hug. "You would? Thanks a lot, Junpei. That's going to help a lot for my mom." Trying to ignore the feeling of her too-endorsed chest pressing on his chest. Damn his premature hormones. He separated with her slowly to avoid an accident between his legs to form. All right. Just let me check somewhere, and I'll call you, okay?" Junpei said, still flustered internally for Mei hugging him. "Right. Call me when you found something." Junpei walked away from the warehouse without his arm guards. "Now I'll have to be careful without destroying things by accident," he thought with a grimace. "Although she did surprise me with that hug. I may have been with women before, but to this extent. Guess sometimes you have to embrace new wonders." He cleared his throat with the intent of stopping his perverted thoughts. He wouldn't want to become some grape midget college in the future. Guess I'll have to go to Dagaba Municipal Beach Park and have a meeting. He smirked, taking a train.